Chapter 1951. Qi Qingxian didn't care about this kind of thing. But today, he said something rare. In my opinion, for someone like your son, it's better to draw a line early. The secret guard in his hands had clearly said that ever since Zhang Fei had agreed to return home, he had only been excitedly asking about how his family was doing. He had not mentioned the Zhang father and daughter at all. Such a person was selfish to the extreme. Zhang Zhenxing said in a low voice, "Thank you for your advice, Your Highness." Qi Qingxian nodded and turned to leave. Gu Xingyin stayed by her father's side the whole time. She could tell that her father really cared about Zhang Fei, which was why she felt uncomfortable at this moment. Zhang Zhenxing came back to his senses and met his daughter's worried eyes. He smiled, "Don't worry too much. Your father's heart isn't that weak. Although I feel a little sad, at most, I'm just disappointed in your brother." He was indeed disappointed because of Zhang Fei's coldness. But after thinking about it, Zhang Zhenxing was glad that this happened. It allowed him to see Zhang Fei's true colors clearly. He would just take it that he had raised an idle person for the past 10 years. He was very glad that he didn't betroth his daughter to Zhang Fei. Otherwise, with Zhang Fei's character, he didn't know what kind of life Jiujiu would have in the future. "Is this the capital?" Zhang Zhenxing lifted the curtain and looked out of the carriage. He felt that there were people coming and going. As far as the eye could see, there was no place that wasn't bustling, no place that wasn't glorious. At this time, the silent man driving the carriage spoke, "Master Zhang, Mr. Zhang. Our master has returned to the manor first. How about I send you directly to the courtyard where you live?" This man was Qi Qingshuan's subordinate. The father and daughter had no objections. Then, the carriage stopped in a quiet alley. Zhang Zhenxing was stunned as soon as he entered the courtyard. He thought that the prince had just casually prepared a residence for them. But now, it seemed that it was much better than casually. His eyes swept across the spacious courtyard, the carved doors and windows, and the elegant and exquisite furnishings in the room. He couldn't help but take a few deep breaths. "Little brother, there's really no need for us father and daughter to live in such a big courtyard." He tried to communicate with the man driving the carriage. The big man replied respectfully, "You are too polite. These are all the master's arrangements. You can rest assured and stay here." Zhang Zhenxing stopped talking. He had taken advantage of others, not to mention such an exquisite courtyard. At this moment, his heart was already in his throat. He couldn't help but think that if Jiujiu couldn't cure that prince's illness, would he fly into a rage out of humiliation? However, Gu Xingyin's attitude was very natural. She asked, "Are you following us on your master's orders?" The big man said in a low voice, "Master said that while the two of you are in the capital, I will follow the two of you and wait for your orders." "That's it." Gu Xingyin looked at Zhang Zhenxing, who was still worried. She sighed and said, "Dad, I remember. Why don't you go and see if there's anything broken on the way here? We'll move it directly to the shop later." Zhang Zhenxing's attention was suddenly diverted. Hearing this, he quickly got up, "Yes, I have to go and see." This was something to settle down and settle down. He couldn't be careless. After watching Zhang Zhenxing walk away, Gu Xingyin asked, "Did your master say when he will come?" Chapter 1952. As Qi Qingshuan's confidant, the man naturally knew that the young girl in front of him was the guest that His Highness ordered to take care of. When he faced Gu Xingyin, there was a layer of respect in his voice, "Miss, as subordinates, we don't know about Master's schedule." He continued, "Master said that he will come to you when the time comes." Gu Xingyin nodded, "All right then." The man continued, "You must be tired from the journey these days. Have a good rest today. Tomorrow, I'll take you to see the shop." Gu Xingyin nodded. Then, the man clapped his hands, and a few people came out of the yard. One of them was a pretty maid in her teens, and the other was a middle-aged woman with a smile on her face. My name is Tsaiha, said the pretty maid. My name is Ing Nyang, said the middle-aged woman. These two have always been in this yard. In the future, they will follow Miss Zhang. If Miss Zhang needs anything, just tell us. Gu Xingyin didn't expect them to be so considerate. She nodded and smiled at the two of them. The man continued, my name is Chi Chao. I'll be responsible for Miss Zhang and Mr. Zhang's safety in the future. By the time they got familiar with everything, it was already yellow in the west. Ing Yang was the cook in this mansion. Her cooking skills were top-notch. After dinner, they went to bed early. The next day, Gu Xingyin sat in a carriage and came to the shop that Qi Qingxian had prepared. She looked at the beautifully decorated shop and the surrounding environment. She was very satisfied. Sure enough, Qi Qingxian did put in a lot of effort. However, Zhang Zhensheng was a little uneasy. He thought that it would be good enough if His Highness could find them a random shop. He didn't expect that it would be in such a good location, and the shop front was really spacious. He was a kind person. He always felt that Zhang family had taken a lot of benefits from His Highness without doing anything. Moreover, he was more worried that if his daughter couldn't cure His Highness's health, these things were really too much for him to accept. On the contrary, Gu Xingyin didn't think so much. She turned to look at Chi Chao. I'll have to trouble you to bring all the things we brought here. Chi Chao grinned and waved his hand, it's no trouble. He was good at martial arts. In less than 15 minutes, they had filled the entire room with all the things that Gu Xingyin and the others had brought over. Chi Chao took out a special token from his waist, and then gently hung it at a certain place at the gate. Zhang Gensheng's puzzled him. He explained, this is our mansion's property. His Highness is taking care of this business, or in other words, His Highness, of Scarabs, lest some ignorant people come here trouble. Of Gu Shengov him understood that day, Zhang Zhensheng and Gu Xingyin stayed in the shop together. However, Gu Xingyin only stayed in the inner room. Zhang Zhensheng was the one who greeted the customers outside. After a day, when Zhang Zhensheng returned to the courtyard, his eyes were wandering. A pot of roses sold for 5 taels of silver. More than 10 pots were sold today. Other than roses, there were other flowers. Almost half of the flowers in the shop were sold today. Zhang Zhensheng calculated the profit. In just one day, he had earned a year's worth of silver. Chapter 1953. Even though he had mentally prepared himself, his eyes were still a little dazed after the calculation. It was indeed the capital. Gu Xingyin facepalmed. She said, Dad, this batch of flowers can be treated as a discount for the opening of the store. In the future, we will go down the path of cherishing flowers. This was what Gu Xingyin had thought about a long time ago. Since she had such a golden finger, it would be a waste to raise those ordinary flowers. In the future, she would focus on raising those precious species that were not easy to raise. If she raised those flowers well, a pot of them would be worth hundreds of pots of ordinary flowers. Most importantly, she would die of exhaustion if she kept ordinary flowers at such a consumption rate. Zhang Zhensheng also came to his senses. He agreed with his daughter's idea. Firstly, he felt sorry for his daughter's tiredness. Secondly, he had seen the generosity of the people in the capital. It was simply a huge market. Let's give the flower shop a name. He suddenly thought of this. Gu Xingyin smiled. I have already thought about it. Flower King Pavilion. This. Zhang Zhensheng was a little hesitant. Isn't it a little too arrogant? Gu Xingyin smiled. That's exactly what we want. We have the ability to do so. She had thought about it a long time ago. The shop mainly sold rare flowers. Her goal was to sell rare flowers in the entire Ming dynasty within a year. The first thing that came to everyone's mind was Flower King Pavilion. If it was an ordinary person, they would not dare to make such a promise. However, she had the spiritual spring in her hands. It was really difficult to raise any plants that could not be raised. Seeing his daughter like this, Zhang Zhensheng also felt a rare sense of pride in his heart. Okay. Flower King Pavilion it is. Dad believes in Jojo. After closing the shop and returning to the courtyard, Gu Xingyin realized that a guest had already arrived. What do you think of the shop? Qi Qingxian asked. Gu Xingyin nodded. Thank you, Your Highness King Ping. Qi Qingxian frowned. For the first time, he felt that the title he had been called for more than 20 years sounded so harsh. However, he did not say anything and just drank his tea quietly. Zhang Zhensheng could tell that he had something to say to his daughter. He found an excuse to return to his room. Miss Zhang, when can you treat me? Qi Qingxian asked. Gu Xingyin glanced at him and said, wait for me here for a while. Soon, she came out with a cup of hot tea. Qi Qingxian took it over. There was a blooming rose on the surface of the tea. Flower tea. He was stunned. Gu Xingyin gestured for him to drink it. Qi Qingxian knew that he should be careful. But for some reason, he was certain that the woman in front of him wouldn't harm him. Therefore, in front of Gu Xingyin, he did not hesitate to drink the cup of hot tea one mouthful after another. Aren't you afraid that I'll poison you? Gu Xingyin teased. Qi Qingxian said seriously, I'm not afraid. Gu Xingyin was surprised. Qi Qingxian said, my heart tells me that you won't hurt me. Gu Xingyin glanced at him and did not say anything. Qi Qingxian only felt that as the cup of flower tea entered his stomach, there seemed to be a cool feeling starting from his stomach and slowly swimming to his limbs and bones. The irritable feeling in his body seemed to disappear without a trace under this cooling sensation. He closed his eyes comfortably. He took a long breath and asked curiously, what's the secret in this flower tea? Gu Xingyin glanced at him and replied, even if I tell you, you won't understand. Qi Qingxian, 6 chapters. I feel like my soul is out of my body when I'm writing tonight. I can't take it anymore. I'll update 6 chapters today and make up for it tomorrow. Today, my monthly votes have exceeded 1,000. Thank you for your votes. I have nothing to repay you with but my body. Cough. Please don't be careless and continue to hit me. Monthly votes. Good night. Chapter 1954. He couldn't help but cover his forehead with his hand and chuckled softly. Gu Xingyin glanced at him. Was this person someone who was amenable to force but not persuasion? She didn't know that King Ping, Qi Qingxian, was not a good-tempered person in the Daming dynasty. She could tell from the Li family's cautious attitude towards him. She was the only person in the world who could treat him with such an attitude without risking the wrath of King Ping. Gu Xingyin said, from tomorrow onwards, take some time out to come to my place every day. I'll make you a cup of special flower tea. After a month, your body will be fine. Qi Qingxian was stunned. That's it? The chronic illness that had plagued his body for more than 20 years, and countless famous doctors had been helpless against it. But in her mouth, it was so easily and skillfully resolved. Gu Xingyin asked, what else do you want? Qi Qingxian choked. Well, this Miss Zhang did not look like an ordinary person. He looked at the sky outside and said, it's getting late. Have a good rest, Miss Zhang. Tomorrow, I'll. He paused and looked at Gu Xingyin inquiringly. Gu Xingyin thought for a moment and said, I'll go to the shop with father these 3 days. You can come tomorrow at the same time. Qi Qingxian nodded. Gu Xingyin watched him leave. Soon, Zhang Zhensheng entered the room. You and His Highness. Zhang Zhensheng looked at his daughter and hesitated. Gu Xingyin looked at him. Zhang Zhensheng found it hard to say, but as a father, he felt that he had to say some things. Father knows that you're a sensible person. That His Highness's appearance and grace are rare in my life. However, we're just an ordinary family. He didn't say much. Zhang Zhensheng believed that with his daughter's intelligence, she would understand what he meant. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but chuckle. What are you thinking, father? I just made a cup of flower tea for the prince to drink. She lowered her voice and said, this involves some secrets. Father, it's best if you don't ask too much. Zhang Zhensheng didn't know what was going on, but looking at his daughter's expression, he knew that it wasn't appropriate to say it. He could only nod his head. You have your own ideas, so I won't care too much about you. It's just that, Jojo, Daddy doesn't ask for riches and honor in this life. I just want to see you live well and find a husband who dotes on you in the future. I just want our family to live a peaceful and beautiful life. Gu Xingyin felt warmth in her heart. With her situation and her beauty, it was likely that many families would be eager for their daughters to take advantage of this opportunity to climb up the prince's good side. Only someone like Zhang Zhensheng, who wholeheartedly cared about his daughter, would be worried that his daughter would be taken advantage of, right? King Ping's residence. This was the most illustrious mansion in the capital. It was located on one of the most famous and influential streets in the capital. The people who could live on this street were all the most powerful existences in the Great Ming Dynasty. Qi Qingxian was sitting in the waterside pavilion in the backyard of the mansion. There was a chessboard in front of him, and a man in a black robe sat opposite him. The man's face was resolute, and his expression was dignified. At first glance, one could tell that he was someone who had been in a high position for many years. Upon closer inspection, Qi Qingshuan's eyebrows and eyes resembled his. The man placed a black piece, and the game was set. Father, your chess skills are superb. I'm ashamed of my inferiority. Qi Qingxian smiled. Chapter 1955. Old King Ping glanced at his son and asked curiously, what happened? Why are you so happy? Qi Qingxian could not help but touch his face and asked in confusion, is it that obvious? That was true. Old King Ping looked at the obvious joy on his son's face and said, nobody knows a son better than a father. Moreover, you never stopped smiling. Qi Qingxian smiled. I've indeed encountered two happy things. Old King Ping's interest was piqued. Oh. Qi Qingxian looked at him and said, I'll keep the first one a secret. I'll tell you when the time comes. As for the second one. He dragged his words and said under Old King Ping's expectant gaze, I met an interesting girl. An interesting girl? Old King Ping's eyes lit up. This was a big deal. He had a deep relationship with the princess consort. When the princess consort passed away, he refused to take in a concubine. He had been guarding Qi Qingxian alone for as many years as he was old. Qi Qingshuan's mother was the princess royal of the Great Ming Dynasty, the younger sister of the emperor. Theoretically, the emperor's son-in-law was forbidden from taking in a concubine. However, the princess royal had passed away for so many years and King Ping was guarding her alone. The emperor in the palace found it hard to bear with this brother-in-law of his. He once planned to arrange a marriage for King Ping but was firmly rejected by King Ping in the name of missing his beloved wife. Therefore, in this huge King Ping's mansion, the real masters were only Old King Ping and Qi Qingxian. This was one of the reasons why the imperial family had been so kind to King Ping's mansion all these years. Logically speaking, Qi Qingxian had the highest status among the princes with a different surname in the Great Ming Dynasty. He also held a part of the military power in his hands. He was one of the best candidates for marriage among the aristocratic families. Before Qi Qingxian turned 20 years old, many families had come to inquire about him. Even the emperor in the palace had said that he would choose a good marriage for his nephew. However, no one knew what was going on. Every time King Ping found someone he fancied, or the person in the palace loosened up a little and wanted to betroth a noble lady to King Ping's heir, that lady would definitely meet with an accident within 3 days. She would either catch a cold and be bedridden or suffer some minor injuries while riding a carriage. Furthermore, none of these things were man-made. They were all extremely coincidental. This kind of thing happened a few times, and Crown Prince Ping's reputation of bringing bad luck to his wife spread throughout the upper circle of the capital. Although no one dared to say it in front of him, who would dare to marry their daughter to him if they truly cared about her? There were those who coveted the power of King Ping's residence and were willing to give up a daughter to climb up this branch, but King Ping did not care about them. As a result, the original crown prince of King Ping became the new King Ping. He was already 22 years old, but his marriage was still unsettled. Old King Ping was a little anxious. Qi Qingxian, on the other hand, felt that his life was pretty good. He had never liked those delicate girls, and it was hard to imagine what it would be like to live with such a woman for the rest of his life. When he mentioned this to the old King Ping was secretly worried that his son might have some kind of unspeakable disease. Or did he have a hobby of splitting peaches? For a long time, the old King Ping had been worrying about how to have an open and honest talk with his son without hurting his son's self-esteem. Chapter 1956. But now, a huge surprise hit him. His son was actually interested in a girl. Old King Ping felt that even if the girl was a shrew, he could accept it without batting an eyelid. He hurriedly asked, "Girl? Which family is the girl from? What's her character like?" Gu Xingyin's fair and delicate face appeared in Qi Qingshuan's mind. He smiled and said, "Her family background is very ordinary. Father, you definitely don't know about it. She's very smart and her personality is also very interesting." It was fine if he did not say anything. Now that he only said half of it, old King Ping was even more curious. However, no matter how he asked, Qi Qingxian seemed to be doing it on purpose and refused to say another word. As the father and son chatted, the topic turned to the poison in Qi Qingshuan's body. A few days ago, father sent someone to find a famous doctor from the western region. However, that doctor has a strange temperament. I'll personally invite him over in a few days. Speaking of this, old King Ping's face darkened. The poison in his son's body was the greatest pain and also the greatest hatred in his life. Back then, he was still young and did things without any scruples. He thought that nothing in the world could hurt him. But what happened later? Those whom he had taught a lesson to, those whom he had offended, and those whom he had never taken seriously, had joined forces and dealt him a fatal blow. They poisoned his pregnant wife. It was a colorless and odorless poison that had no symptoms in the early stages. It was too late when they discovered it. His wife risked her life to give birth to their child. However, their only child was also infected with heat poison from the moment he was born. Even though Qi Qingxian was carefully taken care of and nursed by all the imperial physicians from the imperial hospital since he was born, Qi Qingxian almost died. Later on, the news of Crown Prince Ping being poisoned was sealed off. Those imperial physicians were also ordered to keep their mouths shut. Only one imperial physician, who had been taking Qi Qingshuan's pulse for a long time, was kept in Crown Prince Ping's residence. Outsiders did not see anything unusual about King Ping. Only old King Ping knew what kind of disaster was buried in his son's body. He had seen with his own eyes countless times how much pain his son, who had always had extraordinary endurance, endured when the heat poison flared up on a summer night. Even his teeth were clenched so hard that they bled. Now that he was old, he no longer cared about power and wealth. His lifelong wish was to see the day his son was cured of the poison in his body. Hearing his words, Qi Qingxian said, "Father, don't be too anxious. I met a miraculous doctor when I went out this time. She promised to give me a try. Let's see the results first." Old Ping King's eyes lit up. Really? Was that godly doctor confident? Do you want me to pay him a visit personally? Old man, Qi Chengxian thought of Miss Zhang's face and a smile flashed across his eyes. He coughed lightly and said, "There's no need, father. That godly doctor likes to be quiet and has a low-profile personality. It's best if you don't disturb him." Old King Ping nodded in understanding. "You're right. Those experts always have some weird fetishes." Qi Chengxian held back his laughter and said seriously, "Yes, father. If my fever can really be cured this time, I'll introduce you to her again." Chapter 1957. Old King Ping felt that his son's smile was a little strange. However, he was in the stage where great hope was rising in his heart, so he did not pay too much attention to it. He only said, "If it can really cure the heat poison in your body, I must bring a generous gift and personally thank you." Qi Chengxian smiled but did not say anything. The next day, Gu Xingyin followed her father to the Flower King Pavilion as usual. She was only here to familiarize herself with the situation. Her father, Zhang Zhensheng, was still busy with the business of entertaining the guests. At noon, the plaque that Zhang Zhensheng had spent a lot of money on finally arrived. Looking at the three huge golden words, Flower King Pavilion, even Zhang Zhensheng could not help but feel a sense of pride in his heart. He did not delay and immediately asked someone to hang it up. Such a big movement naturally attracted the attention of the surrounding shops. Everyone first saw the three big words, Flower King Pavilion, and then looked at Zhang Zhensheng's unfamiliar face. They all wondered if this newly opened shop had a strong backer or if he was just a country bumpkin who didn't know the depth of the capital. However, some people had already quietly retracted their gaze. The owner behind the plaque at the door was someone they could not afford to offend. During the day, Zhang Zhensheng was entertaining the guests outside while Gu Xingyin sat in the inner room and listened to the conversations of the various guests. Of course, she wanted to know what kind of flowers these people in the capital liked. "I see that you call yourself the Flower King Pavilion, but you only sell ordinary flowers and plants. How can you be so arrogant?" A sharp female voice questioned. Zhang Zhensheng smiled apologetically and said, "Our shop has just opened. These ordinary potted plants are used as the vanguard. What if those precious flowers are damaged? What should we do?" "Don't worry. In the future, our Flower King Pavilion will live up to this name." As he spoke, he reached out and pointed at the plaque. The madam's gaze followed the direction of his finger and her expression suddenly changed. Then, she did not say anything else. She pointed at two potted plants and left. Obviously, she just noticed that the plaque that was hanging near the plaque was the token of King Ping's mansion. Zhang Zhensheng watched as the group of people walked away and breathed a sigh of relief. At this moment, he finally understood what it meant to lean against a big tree and enjoy its shade. If it wasn't for King Ping's help, even if he had enough money to buy a shop in the capital city, he would have been suppressed to the point that he wouldn't be able to stand up. After sending the guests away, Gu Xingyin stood up. "Father, I have an idea," she slowly explained her idea. Zhang Zhensheng's eyes widened. There was both worry and a hint of excitement in his eyes. "You can really do it?" Gu Xingyin was confident. "Of course, as long as daughter has 2 months, daughter dares to guarantee that our Flower King Pavilion will definitely shock everyone." Zhang Zhensheng pondered for a while, then gritted his teeth and said, "All right, father will give away all the remaining flowers and plants in the shop for free tomorrow, and then spread the news that the Flower King Pavilion will officially open for business in 2 months." Gu Xingyin nodded. "Thank you, father." When they returned home at night, Qi Chengxian was already waiting for them. As usual, Gu Xingyin made him a cup of flower tea with spiritual spring water and watched him finish it. Chapter 1958. What's the matter? Qi Chengxian asked. Based on his understanding of Gu Xingyin these days, she wouldn't stare at him for so long if there was nothing important. Thinking of this, Qi Qingxian couldn't help but reach out and touch his face. He was quite confident in his appearance and charm. He also knew that he was undoubtedly the type that young girls liked. But he didn't know why this trick didn't seem to work in front of Miss Zhang. Yes. Gu Xingyin nodded gracefully. Can you help me find some flower seeds? Qi Qingxian was puzzled. Flower seeds? What kind of flower seeds do you want? He knew that Miss Zhang had the skill of raising flowers. An ordinary potted plant could completely show the appearance of a treasure after being raised by her. From Qi Qingshuan's point of view, those precious flowers in the imperial garden really couldn't compare to Miss Zhang's pink rose. Gu Xingyin said without thinking, it doesn't matter what species it is. In short, the more precious it is, the harder it is to raise, the better it is. Qi Qingxian, it was really the first time he heard such a request. But this didn't seem to be a difficult thing for him. He nodded, this is no problem. I'll go home tonight and ask the gardener in the mansion. If it's not enough, I'll go to the palace and ask for some for you. Qi Qingxian was quite efficient. The next day, when Gu Xingyin returned home, she saw Qi Qingxian sitting in the hall and a man in green standing straight behind him. The man in green was carrying a big bag. Seeing Gu Xingyin come back, Qi Qingxian hurriedly said, "These are the flower seeds I collected. See if there's anything missing. I'll go and find more for you." Gu Xingyin walked over and took a look. She found that in the bag in the hands of the man in green were bags of seeds. The names of the flowers were written on the outside. Taking a closer look, there were at least dozens of flowers in the bag. After a rough glance, there were Yao, Huang, Wei, Purple, Blue, Tianyu, Snow reflecting the morning glow, Mo Lan, Han Lan, etc. She nodded, "Thank you, Your Highness." Qi Qingxian waved his hand and asked curiously, "You want to grow flowers?" Gu Xingyin replied, "Of course, if we don't grow flowers, what will my Flower King Pavilion sell?" Qi Qingxian asked curiously, "I heard that you've given away all the flowers in the Flower King Pavilion today and will only reopen in 2 months. He pointed at the seeds in front of him. "You're not thinking of growing these in 2 months, are you?" That was simply impossible, all right. In terms of time, there was no time at all. Needless to say, most of the flowers here shouldn't be blooming at this season. Gu Xingyin glanced at him and said, "I naturally have my own way." Qi Qingxian did not feel offended at all. Instead, countless curious thoughts arose in his mind. He really wanted to see if this Miss Zhang would really be able to make 100 flowers bloom in the Flower King Pavilion 2 months later. Gu Xingyin made him a cup of tea as usual. "Before you drank my tea, Your Highness, have you ever thought that the heat poison in your body could be cured by a cup of tea a day?" Qi Qingxian was speechless for a moment. After a while, he could only squeeze out a sentence, "The world is so big. I don't think I'm narrow-minded, but I'm still inexperienced." Gu Xingyin laughed and said, "I don't have to go out from tomorrow onwards. Your Highness, you don't have to come so late every afternoon." After saying this, she didn't get a response. When she looked up, she saw Qi Qingxian sitting on the chair and staring at her blankly. Chapter 1959. Qi Qingxian always knew that Miss Zhang was good-looking. Not only was she good-looking, but her temperament was also very special. She didn't look like a girl raised in a small town at all. Seeing Gu Xingyin looking at him in confusion, he coughed a little unnaturally and said, "Since there's nothing else, I'll go back first." Gu Xingyin nodded. Qi Qingxian walked out of the small courtyard in a hurry. He returned to the carriage that had been waiting outside. After he sat down and put down the curtain, he finally let out a long sigh of relief. He couldn't help but put his hand near his heart. At the moment, it was beating fiercely, venting his sense of existence. Qi Qingxian thought that he was a man who had seen many beauties. Why did he feel like he was facing a young boy when facing Miss Zhang? Qi Qingxian knew that he always had some inexplicable thoughts about Zhang Jiujiu. But he never took it to heart before. He thought it was just a reaction that a normal man would have when he saw a beautiful girl. But it was different now. He knew that no normal reaction would be like this. He had never had such a reaction to anyone else. Qi Qingxian closed his eyes and leaned against the wall of the carriage. His face was half hidden in the darkness, making it difficult to see his emotions. In the following period of time, Gu Xingyin was keenly aware of a slight change in Qi Qingxian. Although at first glance, Qi Qingshuan's attitude towards her seemed to be the same as before, but if one looked carefully, one would find that he was deliberately keeping a distance from her. In the past, when he talked to her, there was always a trace of unnatural intimacy. But now, he seemed to be forcing himself to cut off the trace of intimacy that was unconsciously revealed. What happened? On this day, Qi Qingxian drank the cup of flower tea silently. When he was about to leave, Gu Xingyin said, "His Highness is avoiding me." Qi Qingxian was stunned. He said calmly, "Miss Zhang, you must be joking." Gu Xingyin said faintly, "If there's anything that displeases your Highness, you can tell me in person. If you can change it, then change it. If you can't, then at least let me know where the problem lies." Qi Qingxian couldn't help but want to laugh. Sure enough, it was Miss Zhang's usual style. She was straightforward and willful. He actually wanted to say that he thought she was good in every way. It was because she was good in every way that he couldn't control his heart. His body was a huge hidden danger. No one knew if he would be able to save his life when the fire poison that he had suppressed for more than 20 years broke out, so he didn't dare to take any chances. Now that everything had yet to begin, it was best to nip the bud in the bud. As for healing, Qi Qingxian trusted Gu Xingyin enough, but he couldn't underestimate the intensity of the heat poison. On one hand, he was looking forward to being able to get rid of that heavy burden, but on the other hand, he was afraid that the current beautiful situation was just an illusion. In the face of Gu Xingyin's questioning, Qi Qingxian was silent for a moment. He said, "I don't know how to tell you, Miss Zhang. After a month, I will naturally come clean with Miss Zhang." She said the treatment would only take a month. If he could really get the best result, then he would naturally follow his heart. If not, he would stand far away and use the status of Prince Ping's mansion to protect her for the rest of her life. Chapter 1960. Gu Xingyin frowned but didn't say anything. No matter what his identity was, he had his own privacy. Since he didn't want to say it, she couldn't force him to say it. At night, Gu Xingyin blew out the light in her room. After making sure that there were no prying eyes around her, she turned over and lay on the bed. Then, she closed her eyes. The next moment, she appeared in a wonderful place. The green grass was like a cushion, and the ground was covered with a thin layer of white mist. This place was like a fairyland. The scene in the distance seemed to be shrouded in the white mist, making it impossible to see clearly. Gu Xingyin's attention was focused on something nearby. In front of her was the magical spring. On the ground on the other side, the flower pots and seedlings had already been placed together. Gu Xingyin planned to grow flowers directly in this space for 2 months. She had her own considerations. The spiritual energy in this space was abundant, and the flowers and plants would generally grow more luxuriantly and quickly. With the help of the water of the magical spring, it was not a problem to grow a pot of flowers in 2 months. As for the season, that was even less of a problem. There were no 4 seasons in this magical spring space, so it was undoubtedly very suitable for the growth of flowers and plants. The only thing that was hard to do was to keep it a secret. She had so many flowers, and she had always been in this yard, but no one had seen where those flowers were. Anyone would be suspicious of this. Gu Xingyin went to Qi Qingxian the next day. "No one is allowed to step into your yard in the next 2 months." Qi Qingxian was stunned. "Why do you have to tell me?" Gu Xingyin smiled and glanced at him, I can give orders to the servants in this yard, but your men won't listen to me. Qi Qingshuan's expression changed. She even knew about the existence of the secret guards. Maybe Miss Zhang had some quirks in growing flowers, or she had a unique method that she didn't want others to know. Qi Qingxian expressed his understanding. He said, Miss Zhang, don't worry. Without your permission, this king's men will never appear around you. Gu Xingyin nodded, Your Highness King Ping is a man of his word. Zhang Jiujiu will naturally trust you. She suddenly thought of something and asked, How is the heat poison in His Highness' body? Speaking of this, a smile appeared on Qi Qingshuan's face. Miss Zhang has excellent medical skills. I've been feeling great lately. It wasn't just good. Qi Qingxian felt that he had never been so relaxed in his life. In the past, his heat poison would relapse every spring and summer, and he would be tormented for the entire summer. He would only feel better when the weather turned cold in autumn. However, even when the heat poison didn't flare up, he still had to wear the cold jade on his body every day. Every day, he would take some cold pills made from precious herbs to suppress the heat poison in his body. Even so, his body had always been in an extremely violent and anxious state of mind. Every moment, Qi Qingxian felt that he couldn't control his body. He wanted to destroy, and get rid of all the things that were in his way. The doctor who had been nursing his body once said that King Ping's endurance was the best he had ever seen in his life. Such an experience. If it were an ordinary person, he would have broken down long ago. However, he had endured it for more than 20 years. Chapter 1961. Qi Qingxian used to think that he would have to struggle in such pain for the rest of his life until the day he left this world. Unfortunately, he met Gu Xingyin. In Qi Qingshuan's eyes, this mysterious Miss Zhang seemed to have some kind of special magic on her. She didn't have to do anything. As long as he stayed quietly by her side, he could even feel that the restlessness in his body had calmed down. She used such a casual attitude to brew a cup of flower tea for him every day, and it actually succeeded in making the restless heat poison in his body dormant these days. Even the irritable mood had eased a lot. Qi Qingxian couldn't help but have a deeper level of hope that he could completely get rid of the heat poison. Gu Xingyin saw his expression and knew that her mystical spring water had worked. Even if she had the system's guarantee in advance, she still felt relieved. Today was the 10th cup of tea she brewed for Qi Qingxian. From tomorrow onwards, she could add one more drop of mystical spring water in the tea. The next day, when Qi Qingxian took the teacup in her hand, his eyes moved. Today's flower tea seems a little different. He looked at the tea. The color of the tea seemed to be a little bluer than usual. Gu Xingyin replied with a faint From today onwards, the composition of the flower tea has changed a little. Qi Qingxian didn't say anything. He picked up the teacup in his hand and drank it in one gulp. The taste was as good as always. Today's tea even seemed to have a hint of refreshing coolness. From the throat all the way down, it was like a pool of clear spring water. Wherever it passed, it made his internal organs that had been tortured by the heat poison feel refreshed. Gu Xingyin suddenly remembered something. Later on, it will be the official removal of the poison. It may be a little painful. Qi Qingxian smiled carelessly, It's just a little pain. I'm not a person who can't bear pain. Not long after he said this, a burst of severe pain almost made him swallow his tongue directly. Seeing his suddenly pale face, Gu Xingyin calmly brought him to the next room and let him lie on the soft couch. The whole process will take about an hour. Your Highness, please bear with it. Qi Qingxian couldn't really hear what she was saying now. He felt as if there was a sharp knife scraping his body, trying to dig out the hidden toxins in his body bit by bit. The pain of the poison from before was nothing compared to the pain at this moment. Gu Xingyin looked at his half-closed eyes and guessed that his consciousness was not very clear at the moment. The man was drenched in cold sweat, but he gritted his teeth and didn't say a word. He refused to show any weakness. Gu Xingyin's eyes flashed. She took a step forward and grabbed his fingers that were gripping the bedsheet so tightly that his knuckles turned blue. The temperature of her body was much more comfortable compared to the bedsheet. Qi Qingshuan's hands seemed to have found their target again and instantly held her hands tightly. Gu Xingyin's face turned pale for a moment, but he didn't resist. It was so strong that it caused him pain. She bit her lips and gently bent down, kissing his burning but strangely pale lips. "It'll be fine soon." She didn't know if Qi Qingxian heard this sentence, but his grip on Gu Xingyin loosened a little. Although he still used a lot of strength, it didn't make her feel uncomfortable. Chapter 1962. It felt like a long time had passed, but it also felt like only a moment had passed. The man lying on the bed slowly calmed down, but his face was still pale. His body trembled from time to time, indicating that his body was not as calm as it appeared on the surface. Gu Xingyin breathed a sigh of relief. No matter what, after the initial pain, he would feel much better in the following period. She wanted to pull her hand out and stand up, but she found that her hand was tightly held by the man. He did not loosen his grip at all. If she wanted to pull her hand out, she could only do it by force. However, looking at the man who looked so fragile, Gu Xingyin could not bear to do it. She just sat on the chair beside the bed and looked at the man quietly. Qi Qingxian had a good sleep. He still remembered the pain at the beginning as if his bones were being scraped off. However, after the pain passed, his whole body felt as if it had sunk into a warm pool. It was warm and smooth, and he could not help but indulge in it. He couldn't remember how long it had been since he last had a good night's sleep without any burden like this. When he woke up, it was afternoon. Orange light shone into the room through the window. Qi Qingxian opened his eyes and realized that he seemed to be holding something in his hand. He came back to his senses and looked at the person whose hands he was holding and whose body was leaning against the couch and sleeping. The warmth in his palm was so real. Qi Qingxian was not in a hurry to get up. He just lay there and looked at the person's peaceful eyes. From his angle, he could see Gu Xingyin's thin and dense eyelashes covering her eyes like a small fan. Her red lips were slightly open, and a little red tongue could be seen from time to time. Qi Qingxian felt a little thirsty inexplicably. Even in his sleep, Gu Xingyin could feel the undisguised heat in his eyes. She opened her eyes in confusion. She was still a little confused because she was not fully awake. When she saw Qi Qingxian, she said subconsciously, "Good afternoon." As she spoke, she seemed to want to do something. Only then did she realize that her hand was still held by the man. Gu Xingyin, she was stunned for a few seconds before her slow brain finally started to work slowly. He also recalled what had happened earlier. Qi Qingxian looked at the girl in front of him with pity. Her expression changed from confusion to clarity. She definitely didn't know how adorable she looked like that. He thought to himself. Gu Xingyin subconsciously wanted to pull her hand back, but Qi Qingxian secretly exerted more force to prevent her from doing so. Gu Xingyin called out to him in surprise and dissatisfaction, "Your Highness King Ping." Qi Qingxian said with a smile, "I haven't asked Miss Zhang why she kissed me when I was unconscious." Gu Xingyin. What happened to being unconscious? She said calmly, "Could it be that His Highness was in so much pain that he fainted and started hallucinating?" Qi Qingxian locked his eyes on her. "I know very well whether it's an illusion or not." Gu Xingyin did not comment. She thought to herself, "What can you do to me if I don't admit it?" Qi Qingxian seemed to have guessed Gu Xingyin's plan from her indifferent expression. He said with a smile, "I have a way to prove whether I was hallucinating just now." Chapter 1963. Gu Xingyin turned her head in confusion. When she was about to ask what the solution was, she was caught off guard by a scorching kiss. She widened her eyes. She didn't expect that in this world where relationships between men and women were strictly forbidden, there was actually a man who dared to do such an outrageous thing. Qi Qingxian usually acted too harmless in front of her, so she almost forgot that this man who always smiled warmly in front of her was the most distinguished person in the entire Ming dynasty. Qi Qingxian obviously sensed her shock. A hint of a smile flashed across his eyes, and he did not let go of this opportunity at all. His domineering tongue went straight into Gu Xingyin's mouth, forcing Gu Xingyin to cling onto his body helplessly. Gu Xingyin's entire body turned limp. After a long time, he let go of her reluctantly. I can now be sure that Miss Zhang's taste is as delicious as the kiss I sensed when I was in a coma. Gu Xingyin was exasperated. She raised her head and glared at Qi Qingxian fiercely. She snorted coldly and turned her head away without saying anything. Qi Qingxian was obviously insatiable. However, I haven't touched a woman for more than 20 years. Miss Zhang secretly kissed me while I was in a coma. Have you thought of the consequences? Gu Xingyin turned her head and looked at Qi Qingxian with a sneer. Consequences? What consequences do you want? Qi Qingxian smiled cunningly. For example, becoming my princess consort. How about that? Gu Xingyin was stunned for a moment and subconsciously retorted, with your identity, will the prince's mansion allow you to marry a woman from a merchant family? As soon as she finished speaking, she realized that she had spilled the beans. However, it was too late to take back her words. Qi Qingxian laughed. So, Jojo has already thought about our future. He had learned by himself to address Gu Xingyin as Jojo instead of Miss Zhang. Gu Xingyin snorted coldly and glanced at his face. It's rare for me to see a good-looking man. I'm very pleased. Is there a problem? Even if you lose, you can't lose. However, Qi Qingxian didn't care about this at all. When he heard Gu Xingyin's words, he even leaned over and said with a smile, that's my honor. I wonder if Jojo likes Xiaowang's face. Gu Xingyin stared at Qi Qingxian with her eyes wide open. She deeply felt that the noble, cold, and domineering man she first saw was definitely an illusion caused by her own blindness. If old King Ping, who was rumored to be resolute and brave, were to see his son in such a state, would he be so angry that he would use the family discipline to serve him? Qi Qingxian looked at Gu Xingyin and felt his heart soften. He originally planned to wait until the end of the month before making a decision based on the results of the treatment. But this time when he was unconscious, Gu Xingyin's actions made him realize that perhaps this usually cold and indifferent Miss Zhang also had the same thoughts towards him. This realization made countless colorful bubbles rise in his heart. He couldn't resist the desire to do something. He held Gu Xingyin's hand tightly and said, Jojo, just you wait. If I, Qi Qingxian, am lucky enough to get rid of the heat-related poison after a month, I will personally ask my uncle to grant us a marriage. He stopped Gu Xingyin from saying anything. Don't worry. I will do everything well. My Jojo only needs to be happy and be the most beautiful bride. Chapter 1964. Qi Qingxian left the small courtyard with a satisfied smile on his face. Gu Xingyin, who was left in the courtyard, was stunned for a moment. Finally, she could not help but stroke the corner of her mouth and reveal a smile. Neither of them told anyone else about the agreement between the two of them. However, in the eyes of outsiders, King Ping seemed to be in a good mood recently. There were more smiles on his face than before. Old King Ping knew a little about it. He purposely went to his son's courtyard. Qingxian, the poison in your body. He looked a little agitated. A few days ago, his son told him that he had found an amazing doctor who was treating him. Now that his son was behaving like this, he naturally could not help but think of the best. Qi Qingxian looked at his father who was more agitated than him. He could not help but feel sour in his heart. He naturally knew how much his father had secretly worried about his health all these years. He quickly got up and invited old King Ping to sit down. He said, "Don't worry too much. I originally planned to tell you after I've recovered. The doctor said that she has at least a 90% chance of curing the poison in my body." Qi Qingxian said it himself. According to Gu Xingyin, it was not difficult to cure Qi Qingshuan's heat poison. However, Qi Qingxian had suffered from the heat poison before. When he spoke, he left some leeway for her. However, this was enough to make old King Ping wild with joy. 90% chance. If she dared to say such a thing, it at least meant that the doctor was quite confident about curing the poison in his son's body. He had waited bitterly for so many years. Finally, he saw a glimmer of hope. He could not help but hold his son's hand tightly. "It's good that you're confident. It's good that you're confident." At the same time, in Mingyi Marquis Mansion. Bam! A brand new tea set was swept to the ground. "That bitch Sun Jingjing, how dare she make a poem to mock me?" In a luxuriously decorated room, a young lady in a silver-red dress cursed with a livid expression. A few personal maids were kneeling outside her room. At this moment, no one dared to provoke this young lady. "Madam." The maidservants hurriedly bowed when they saw the middle-aged woman walking over after hearing the commotion. The woman didn't even look at them. She asked the old maidservant behind her to open the door. Chen Mingzhu, who was in a fit of anger, lowered her head in fear when she saw her mother standing at the door and staring at her expressionlessly. The Marquis of Mingyi said faintly, "The things that eldest miss through today will be deducted from her monthly allowance for next month." When she met her daughter's incredulous gaze, she didn't even bat an eyelid. "Chen Mingzhu, I spent so much effort on you, not to raise a shrew." She asked someone to tidy up the room and called Chen Mingzhu into her courtyard. "Tell me, what happened today?" The Marquis of Mingyi opened the teacup beside her. She didn't pick it up but used her well-maintained white fingers to gently pick up the teacup lid and wipe away the tea foam. Chen Mingzhu had always been arrogant and despotic both inside and outside the residence, but she was most afraid of this gentle and amiable-looking mother of hers. She lowered her head and slowly recounted the events of the day from beginning to end. It turned out that the daughter of the Minister of Rites held a banquet. In the capital, all the noble ladies who had some connections were invited. Chapter 1965. Mingyi Marquis Mansion was a proper noble family. As the eldest daughter of the Marquis Mansion, Chen Mingzhu naturally received the invitation. The bad thing was that Sun Jingjing, the youngest daughter of the Minister of Revenue, who had always been at odds with Chen Mingzhu, also went. Chen Mingzhu's reputation among the noble ladies was not very good. Firstly, Mingyi Marquis Mansion had long declined and had no successor. They still retained the first-rank title only because of the achievements of the old officials. Secondly, Chen Mingzhu's domineering and flamboyant personality was well known in the noble ladies' circle. She once pushed a sixth-rank official's daughter into the water at Duchess Donglin's birthday banquet. It was because the other party was wearing a dress of the same color, but it was brighter than hers. Those who did not have enough status did not dare to provoke her. Those who had enough status did not want to argue with her because of their status, so she was always so arrogant. However, the youngest daughter of the Minister of Revenue, Sun Jingjing, was not like this. Sun Jingjing had 3 older brothers. Her mother gave birth to a pearl at an old age and was nearly 40 years old. Her grandmother only gave birth to her. The whole mansion looked at her like she was the apple of everyone's eye. Ever since she was young, Sun Jingjing had always gotten whatever she wanted. Her personality was also straightforward. She and Chen Mingzhu had a grudge from the first time they met. After that, as long as the two of them appeared in the same place, they were bound to fight. This time, it happened to be at the flower banquet. Sun Jingjing made a poem on the spot, mocking her for being unlearned and mean. Chen Mingzhu was furious, but she could not return the favor. Sun Jingjing was right about one thing. She, Chen Mingzhu, had no knowledge at all. This was why Chen Mingzhu went home and took out her anger on the things in her room. The Marquis of Mingyi looked at her daughter in disappointment. Such a stupid fool. If she did not crawl out of her womb, she really did not want to care about her. Unfortunately, there were no ifs. She only had one daughter. No matter how rotten the mud was, she had to find a way to support her. Looking at Chen Mingzhu's beautiful face, the Marquis of Mingyi's heart finally felt a little comforted. Fortunately, this daughter was not completely useless. With this face, she was also one of the few in the noble ladies' circle in the capital. She had placed all her hopes on Chen Mingzhu for the rest of her life. She put down the teacup lid in her hand and said, "How many times have I told you, don't fight over such meaningless emotions? If you have the time to be angry, why don't you think about it? What gift do you plan to give to old consort N's birthday next month?" Chen Mingzhu was stunned. After a while, she said, "Don't we have a lot of good things in our warehouse? When the time comes, just pick a few things." The Marquis of Mingyi was so angry that her face turned pale. "You are already of marriageable age, Mingzhu. In the entire capital, among the young masters of the right age, the Crown Prince of Prince N is the best in terms of background, status, and character. All the other girls are trying their best to attract the attention of the dowager consort. Is this your attitude?" Sometimes, the Marquis of Mingyi really wondered if the child she gave birth to had been swapped. How could he be so stupid? Only then did Chen Mingzhu regain her senses. Her face flushed red, but, I don't know what old consortin likes. The Marquis of Mingyi sighed and said, "I didn't expect you to think so far. I have already inquired. Old consortin only loves peonies her whole life. If you can find a peony of the highest quality at her birthday, I reckon that it will be able to enter her eyes." Chapter 1966. Chen Mingzhu listened to her mother's matter-of-fact words and curled her lips. She said unwillingly, "But it's not the season for peonies. Where can I find a pot of flowers for him?" The Marquis of Mingyi glared at her and said, "If it's so easy to find, how can it be called precious?" She said slowly, "I've asked the craftsmen in the mansion to make preparations a long time ago to see if they can grow a peony in this season. Unfortunately, the peony is too delicate to grow. A few days ago, it was said that a shop called Flower King Pavilion opened near Chang'an Street in the capital. The owner of the shop is very mysterious. It closed after 2 days of operation, but the sign of Flower King Pavilion was not taken down. Since they dared to use such a name, they must have some ability. I'll send someone to keep an eye on them. If they have any news, we must act first." Chen Mingzhu's eyes lit up and she said with a smile, "Mother, you're so smart." The Marquis of Mingyi only felt tired. If this daughter of hers could work harder, she wouldn't need to spend so much effort to pave the way for her at such an old age. Gu Xingyin didn't know that someone had set their eyes on her. Every day, she removed the poison for Qi Qingxian. The rest of the time, she read books and occasionally went to the space to look at the flowers she raised. 10 days passed in this way. Qi Qingxian had adapted to the pain of removing the heat poison from his body. The removal of the poison was originally difficult at the beginning. It would only get easier and easier as time went on. Now, Qi Qingxian could go through the whole process with a clear mind. "Now that the heat poison in your body has been removed, I'll give you another kind of flower tea in 8 days from tomorrow onwards," said Gu Xingyin. Qi Qingxian only felt that his body was very relaxed. At this moment, the burning sensation that followed him like a shadow finally completely disappeared from his body. At the same time, he was a little confused. Since the poison has been removed, why do I still need to drink flower tea? Of course, Qi Qingxian had to admit that the flower tea made by Jiujiu tasted very good. Even if he didn't need to treat his illness, having a cup every day was excellent. However, after being ill for so many years, he had already developed the habit of asking. Gu Xingyin glanced at his pale face and said, "Such a potent poison has lingered in your body for so many years. The damage it has left on your body is far more than you can imagine. If it weren't for the fact that Prince Ping's mansion had spent so much money over the years just to find all kinds of rare herbs that could nourish the body and suppress the heat poison, it was hard to say whether Qi Qingxian would still be alive today." Qi Qingxian was silent for a moment. He asked softly, "Then, will there be any consequences in the future?" Gu Xingyin's expression was solemn. "It's already not easy for you to stay alive until now. Although the poison has been removed, her body has been damaged beyond recognition. Even if she recuperates well, her body can't be as healthy as a normal person. Even when it comes to having children, it will be hindered." With every sentence she uttered, Qi Qingshuan's face darkened. Towards the end, it was as dark as the bottom of a pot. What Gu Xingyin said was like a drowning man who thought that he had finally grabbed onto a piece of driftwood that could save him. However, after taking a closer look, he realized that the driftwood was already rotten and could fall apart at any time. Chapter 1967. There was silence in the room. After a long while, Qi Qingshuan's lips twitched and he forced a smile. "I know." He was still thinking of giving the woman in front of him so many things in the future. However, the truth now told him that he might not have the chance at all. Gu Xingyin suddenly raised her head and smiled at him. "I didn't lie to you when I said so much to you just now. If you didn't meet me, you wouldn't be able to escape the consequences I said even if you were detoxified. However, Qi Qingxian, you're so lucky to meet me." She smiled slyly, and her curved eyes were like two clear crescent moons. "What do you think I mean by letting you continue drinking my flower tea?" Qi Qingxian was stunned. After a long while, his slow mind slowly understood the meaning of Gu Xingyin's words. His dim eyes lit up and fell on Gu Xingyin's face. Sparks of expectation were ignited as if he wanted to confirm something. Gu Xingyin looked into his eyes and blinked. "It's hard for you to be unwell in my hands." As soon as she finished speaking, her body suddenly fell into a warm embrace. The man hugged her tightly, as if he had used up all the strength he had in his life. "You bad girl." Qi Qingxian gritted his teeth in anger. In the end, he just gently bit her ear. Gu Xingyin snorted with some dissatisfaction, but she lay in his arms obediently and didn't say anything. "Mr. Zhang, is what you said true?" Old Prince Ping looked at the two people in front of him with excitement. Not far from him, Qi Qingxian was sitting on a chair. Opposite him, an old man with white hair and beard was checking his pulse attentively. The old man who was addressed as Mr. Zhang nodded his head in admiration. "That's right. This old man has checked again and again. The heat poison in his highness' body has indeed been completely removed." There was a trace of yearning in his words. He looked at Qi Qingxian eagerly. "Your Highness, I wonder if you could introduce me to that miracle-working doctor." Qi Qingxian shook his head regretfully. "I'm really sorry, Mr. Zhang. That miracle-working doctor doesn't see guests and has already left." Hearing this, Mr. Zhang sighed. It was obvious that he was disappointed that he had lost such an opportunity. After Mr. Zhang left, old King Ping walked to his son's side. "Now, can you introduce me to that godly doctor? No one knows a son better than his father." Old King Ping could tell at a glance that his son was just trying to evade the responsibility. Qi Qingxian did not refuse this time. He told old King Ping in advance, "When you see the godly doctor later, he might be different from what you imagined. Father, please don't be surprised." Old King Ping scolded with a smile, "Don't worry, your father has seen a lot of the world, I won't lose my composure." However, reality soon slapped him in the face. Looking at the smiling young lady in front of him who was obviously just a little girl, the old King Ping was still stunned. This was the miracle-working doctor who cured his son's chronic illness for more than 20 years. He forced himself to calm down and looked at his son. His meaning was obvious. You really didn't find a random person to fool me? Qi Qingxian looked innocent. I've told you in advance. Gu Xingyin looked at this scene with a smile. She did not expose him and bowed to old King Ping naturally. Zhang Jiujiu greets old King Ping. 4 o'clock. There's another update at 10 o'clock. Help me up, I think I can still write a few thousand words. Chapter 1968. Fortunately, the old prince was just like what he said. He had seen too many bizarre things. Even though he was extremely shocked, he did not lose his composure on the surface. Don't judge a book by its cover. This was what he had taught his son countless times. This time, he wanted to repeat it to himself as well. If this person was really the miracle doctor who cured his son, so what if she was so young? Don't judge a hero by his age. He showed a kind smile and said, Miss Zhang, you don't have to be so courteous. I'm just here to visit the miracle doctor who cured my son, Qingxian. He looked at Gu Xingyin. The meaning of his words was self-evident. Gu Xingyin smiled faintly. You flatter me, old prince. I just happen to know how to cure the heat poison. I don't deserve the title of miracle doctor. She was obviously admitting that she was the one who cured Qi Qingxian. The old prince stared at her. Gu Xingyin looked back at him without avoiding his gaze. Her eyes were clear and pure. After a while, old Prince Ping suddenly raised his head and laughed. He suddenly bent over and bowed deeply to Gu Xingyin. This sudden movement startled Gu Xingyin, and she quickly dodged to the side. After old Prince Ping bowed deeply, he raised his head. This bow doesn't represent the Prince Ping residence. It represents an ordinary father. He looked deeply at Gu Xingyin and said sincerely, Thank you, Miracle Dr. Zhang, for curing my son. Gu Xingyin was shocked. She looked at Qi Qingxian. As expected, the man's eyes were red. Gu Xingyin stepped forward and gently helped the old prince to a chair at the side to take a seat. You don't have to do this. I cured Prince Ping and he agreed to my request. It's a fair deal. It's not a favor. Old Prince Ping shook his head. No matter what Qingxian promised you, it's just something external. Miracle Dr. Zhang, you've saved his life. In this world, there was nothing that could compare to it. Gu Xingyin looked at the stubborn old man with a complicated expression. She could feel that this man, who had been tough all his life, was devoted to his son. At this moment, Qi Qingxian stepped forward. He stood in front of the old King Ping. His eyes were still a little red, but his words were full of smiles. Father, you're making things difficult for your son by saying this. King Ping was confused. He glared at his son and scolded, What nonsense are you talking about? Miracle Dr. Zhang is here, why aren't you coming over to thank the miracle doctor? Qi Qingxian looked at Gu Xingyin and smiled bitterly. Gu Xingyin understood and said, Since you're here today, please have a taste of my flower tea. I dare guarantee that it's absolutely unique in the entire DMing dynasty. When she said this, the strong confidence in her words surprised old King Ping. He smiled and said, Then I'll wait for the miracle doctor's good tea. Gu Xingyin walked out of the room and left the father and son alone. Qi Qingxian coughed and suddenly said, Father, I forgot to tell you something. Old King Ping was in a good mood. He quickly asked, What is it? Qi Qingxian calmly threw out the bomb, I want to marry Miracle Dr. Zhang as my princess consort. Old King Ping thought he heard wrongly. He looked at his son and asked, What did you say? Qi Qingxian repeated, I want to marry Miracle Dr. Zhang as my princess consort. Chapter 1969. The old king felt a little dazed. He felt that he had received too much stimulation today. First of all, the heat poison that had troubled his son for so many years was cured just like that. Before he could recover from the ecstasy, his son told him that the daughter-in-law he had been thinking about for so many years would be born soon. Qi Qingxian saw his father's expressionless face and thought that his father did not agree. He quickly said, "There are two reasons why I've never mentioned about marriage in the past few years. First, with my body, I don't know what the future will be like. I don't want to spoil a girl in the world. Second, I've never met a girl that I want to spend the rest of my life with." "So, Miracle Dr. Zhang is the girl that you want to spend the rest of your life with?" Old King Ping added. Qi Qingxian quickly nodded. Old King Ping's expression was a little strange. Qi Qingxian could not figure out what his father was thinking. He could not help but feel a little nervous. Old King Ping saw his son's expression and suddenly asked, "What will you do if I don't agree?" Qi Qingxian carefully glanced at Old King Ping. He could not tell if he was happy or angry. He thought for a moment and replied, "Then I won't marry." Old King Ping frowned. He felt that his son was not someone who would give up so easily. Sure enough, in the next moment, he heard Qi Qingxian say, "I'll serve you until you're old. After 100 years, I'll find a child from the side branch to take care of me." What he meant was, if I want to marry, I'll marry her. If you don't let me marry her, I won't marry anyone. Old King Ping was so angry that he laughed. He scolded, "You brat. Where did you learn such a bad temper?" Qi Qingxian thought to himself, "Didn't you bring me up since I was young?" At this moment, someone knocked on the door. Old King Ping and Qi Qingxian stopped talking at the same time. Both of them calmly looked at Gu Xingyin entering the room with a cup of tea. Gu Xingyin glanced at both of them. She had a feeling that something had happened that she did not know about. However, she was not interested in eavesdropping on the conversation between father and son. After passing the tea to Old King Ping, Gu Xingyin passed another cup to Qi Qingxian. Then, she slowly picked up the cup and drank it. Old Ping King picked up his teacup with great interest. The first thing that came into view was a large rose in full bloom. The petals were clear and full, as if they were still blooming beautifully on the branches. Looking at the tea again, it was clear with a hint of green. This was a color that could only be seen from the best quality of water. However, its appearance was worthy of praise. Old King Ping gently took a sip. His eyes lit up. He didn't know if it was because of psychological reasons, but he felt as if something extremely cool and soothing entered his body along with the tea. His body, which had become increasingly tired due to his age, suddenly felt refreshed. His eyes were filled with extraordinary splendor. After a few sips, the cup of tea was quickly emptied. Old King Ping felt comfortable all over. This feeling reminded him of when he was young, when he practiced a set of fist techniques to his heart's content in the martial arts practice field. Then, he felt as if all the pores on his body had opened up and he could breathe freely. He looked at Gu Xingyin in surprise. "Dr. Zhang's tea?" Gu Xingyin smiled faintly. "It's just a small trick. Drinking it over a long period of time can nourish the body," she added, "especially for people like Old King Ping who had hidden injuries when he was young." Chapter 1970. Old King Ping's heart skipped a beat. He knew his body's condition. He had been on the battlefield many years ago and had left behind many hidden injuries. However, all these years, famous doctors had been nursing his body and it was quite effective. At least on the surface, Old King Ping looked hale and hearty with a ruddy complexion. He was an old man who couldn't be more robust. However, this Miss Zhang was actually able to tell at a glance that there was a hidden danger in his body. As expected, the wise never show their true colors. Old King Ping secretly sized up Gu Xingyin. Looking at her from a different angle, he was more and more satisfied. Good looks, good medical skills, good temper, and a clean family background, such a good lady is perfect for Qingxian. Old King Ping and Gu Xingyin chatted about many topics. When they left, Gu Xingyin specially gave him a pot of homemade flower tea, saying that it was good for his body. After coming out from Gu Xingyin's courtyard, old King Ping sighed. Miracle Dr. Zhang is indeed a good lady. Qi Qingxian was delighted. Father, do you like her too? Old King Ping glared at him. If I say I don't like her, will you give up? Qi Qingxian smiled and didn't reply. His meaning was obvious. Old King Ping said impatiently, let's not talk about you first. What do you think of Miracle Dr. Zhang? If a lady like her isn't willing, even if you force her to marry you, you won't be able to get along with her in the future. Qi Qingxian smiled. Father, don't worry. I still have this bit of charm. Brat. Old King Ping pondered for a moment and said, I'll meet with Miracle Dr. Zhang's father in a few days and bring up this matter. After the Zhang family agrees, I'll enter the palace to ask for a favor. He said, in the eyes of outsiders, Miracle Dr. Zhang doesn't have a respectable status. It's inevitable that people will look down on her. Thinking of the emperor's uncle who had doted on him since he was young, Qi Qingxian was a little worried. I wonder if His Majesty will be dissatisfied with Jojo. The old prince looked at him and said, don't worry. If I really marry a girl with no family background for you, even if His Majesty doesn't like it on the surface, he will definitely be willing. Qi Qingshuan's expression darkened. Thinking of the current situation in King Ping's residence, he shut his mouth. As a king with a different surname, King Ping's mansion was so powerful that it was almost beyond the limits of a subject. At this time, if she were to find another powerful marriage partner, the person in power above would feel uneasy. Under such circumstances, the emperor would be more at ease if King Ping married a lady with a simple family background. No matter how much that person loved him, he was still the ruler of the world. A few days later, when Zhang Genqing's mind was completely blank, the old King Ping paid a formal visit to discuss the marriage of the two families' children. Zhang Genqing was dumbfounded the entire time, as if he had no idea what was going on. A few months ago, he was just an ordinary merchant in a small town. But now, a prince actually came to ask for his daughter's hand in marriage. Moreover, it was the princess consort. He tried his best to calm himself down. Looking at the smiling old King Ping, he said, Your Highness, it's better to be cautious about this kind of marriage. Old King Ping looked serious. That's why I'm here to discuss with you, Mr. Zhang. If there are no objections, I'll enter the palace tomorrow and ask for an audience with His Majesty to grant a marriage between my son and Miss Zhang. Chapter 1971. His Majesty. For someone of Zhang Genqing's status, the highest status people he had ever met were the mayor and the county magistrate. Later, he came to the capital and met the prince. But what did he hear now? His Majesty. To the common people, the word emperor was not just a title. They did not know what it meant exactly, but they felt that anything related to the title of emperor would become very sacred and solemn. Zhang Genqing pinched himself hard with his hand hidden in his sleeve, trying to keep himself awake. He said to King Ping, although it is said that parents' orders and matchmakers' words, our Jojo has always had her own ideas. Your Highness, please allow me to talk to my daughter about this. The old prince nodded. At that time, Zhang Genqing still did not know that his delicate little girl was already in the big bad wolf's mouth. Hence, the old prince went back with a mysterious smile. After Zhang Genqing understood his daughter's intention, he fell into deep thought. This surprise came too suddenly. After the initial shock and other emotions, Zhang Genqing fell into deep thought and anxiety. He was very worried. Although he had always known that his daughter was beautiful, Zhang Genqing had never thought of letting her marry into a wealthy family. Especially now that the Flower King Pavilion was about to open for business and the father and daughter's life was getting better. Previously, he thought that there was no need to find a wealthy family for his daughter. The key was that the person had to be good and the family had to be upright. Or, he could just marry into the family. In this way, no matter what, Jojo would not be wronged in the future. However, before he could think of everything, King Ping's appearance disrupted all his plans. How was this just marrying into a wealthy family? In terms of status, the Zhang family and King Ping's residence were in two completely different worlds. Although in Zhang Gensheng's heart, his daughter was the most beautiful, capable, and considerate person in the world, it did not mean that he did not know his place. However, King Ping's residence looked very sincere. The most depressing thing was that Jojo did not object at all. He was very worried. Although King Ping's residence looked very sincere now, who could guarantee that in the future? If Jojo was wronged in the future, who would stand up for her? The more Zhang Gensheng thought about it, the more he could not help but sigh. He had looked for his daughter many times, but Gu Shengyin's attitude was very clear, she was willing to marry him. Thinking of King Ping's handsome face and his one-in-a-million elegance, Zhang Gensheng fell silent. It was indeed easy for a man like him to make a girl fall for him. Qi Qingxian probably knew that his future father-in-law had a lot of concerns. He began to frequent the Zhang mansion. However, it was not to see Gu Shengyin, but to see Father Zhang. Time and time again, his sincerity moved Father Zhang. Not to mention the son of a noble, even if it was the son of a poor family, it was rare to see someone willing to do such a thing for the person they liked. Old King Ping also knew about this. Although he was scolding the brat, he was secretly pleased in his heart. This brat's shamelessness is very similar to my demeanor in the past. He did not come from a good family and started his career on the battlefield. If it was not for his thick skin, it would be really difficult for him to marry the noble Princess Royal. Finally, when Gu Shengyin's flowers began to bloom, Zhang Gensheng relented. Chapter 1972. When the Flower King Pavilion first opened, it attracted a lot of attention. After all, it was in such a good location. The surrounding shops were either gold, silver, jade, or rare antiques. It was a waste to use it to sell flowers. However, when the Flower King Pavilion's flowers and prices were announced, people felt that it was reasonable to spend money like this on Chang'an Street. Then, 3 days later, when everyone saw the signboard of the Flower King Pavilion and was waiting for them to make a big move, the Flower King Pavilion actually closed. Everyone, after doing business for so many years, they had never seen such a thing. It was undeniable that people were interested in the Flower King Pavilion's unusual way of opening. However, after 2 months, their interest had dissipated. However, Gu Shengyin did not expect to keep people interested for 2 months. What she wanted was for her Flower King Pavilion to leave a deep impression in the hearts of those people. Then, the next time they mentioned it, they would be interested in it again. For example, at this moment. The Flower King Pavilion, which had been closed for so long, opened for business. Many people watched as carriages without any marking stopped at the entrance of the Flower King Pavilion. Then, people alighted from the carriages and carried pots of covered flowers into the shop. Was it finally going to open for business? Why was it so secretive? Many people who had nothing to do on Chang'an Street were attracted by this scene. Someone muttered, "Isn't it just a few pots of flowers? What's there to cover?" Coincidentally, when he finished speaking, there was a gust of wind from the horizon. The gauze covering the pot of flowers in the hands of a man in gray who was closer to the crowd was suddenly blown up. Hua Yuan, who was in his arms, revealed her true appearance in front of everyone. Hiss! Some people who knew the value of the flowers exclaimed. Could this be the rare orchid, the Hanting orchid? A middle-aged man in green clothes said excitedly. The rest of the people were also discussing. However, the man in gray quickly grabbed the gauze cover and covered the flowers in his hands. Then, he went back into the shop without looking back. He had no intention of answering the crowd's questions. Another person said hesitantly, "Could it be Han Ting Yulan? Not to mention that it's extremely rare and difficult to raise, even now, it's not the season for the orchids in the Han Pavilion to bloom." However, even though he said that, his expression was somewhat excited. After all, that beautiful flower just now was almost exactly the same as the cold pavilion orchid described in books. Gu Xingyin wore a veil and stood in the middle of the crowd. She listened to their discussion and smiled. Sure enough, there were times when these scholars were even crazier than ordinary people. They thought highly of themselves and looked down on ordinary things, but they had extra respect for those flowers and plants that were metaphorically referred to as gentlemen. That was why she had chosen a lot of orchids and chrysanthemums. With so many scholars doing publicity for her, she didn't have to worry about the Flower King Pavilion's reputation. At this time, another luxurious carriage stopped nearby. Gu Xingyin sensed something and turned her head slightly. A girl in a bright red dress with delicate features and a somewhat domineering temperament walked out of the carriage with the help of a servant girl. Chen Mingzhu had finally arrived. Chapter 1973. Ever since Chen Mingzhu heard the words of the Marquis of Mingyi's wife, she began to pay attention to the big and small flower shops in the capital. She also asked people to inquire about the famous gardeners. But unfortunately, the result was that there was no way to plant peonies in this season. Today, she was in the mansion. When she heard that the Flower King Pavilion suddenly opened, she had a thought and asked people to prepare a carriage to come here. Many people around recognized her, and some of them even frowned and took a few steps back without leaving a trace. The domineering reputation of the eldest daughter of the Marquis of Mingyi's mansion had spread throughout the capital. However, when Chen Mingzhu saw this scene, she did not feel angry. Instead, she felt proud. In her eyes, these people were afraid of the reputation of the Marquis of Mingyi's mansion. She saw that everyone was standing outside and did not go in. She frowned and walked straight to the Flower King Pavilion with her maids. Of course, she was stopped by someone. Zhang Zhenxing walked out personally and apologized with a smile, "I'm sorry, Mississippi. The shop is not cleaned up yet. The floor is dirty and I'm afraid it will dirty your eyes. Please come in after it's cleaned up." These words were not too much. If it was an ordinary person, they would probably follow this excuse. But Chen Mingzhu did not. She raised her eyebrows and said, "This is the first time I've heard that a business owner would leave their customers outside. Do you have any rare treasures in your shop that you have to hide them like this?" She said coldly, "I really want to be the first person to enter the shop." As she spoke, she wanted to force her way in. Zhang Genqing's expression changed. He thought that there were all kinds of people in the capital. This young lady seemed to be of noble status, and her appearance was not bad. Who would have thought that she would be so unreasonable? Fortunately, Qi Chengxian had prepared a lot of people in advance to gain the favor of his future father-in-law. They came in handy. Looking at the row of people in gray with cold temperament, Chen Mingzhu was shocked. She did not expect that this little flower shop owner would dare to stop her. The little girl in green beside her scolded, "How dare you? Do you know who our young lady is? Hurry up and back down." Zhang Zhenxing also put away the smile on his face and said indifferently, "I don't know who this young lady is, and I have no intention of offending any guests today. However, there is a rule. Miss, please don't make things difficult for us." He had a lean appearance to begin with. Today, he had specially put on a light muslin robe with a brocade belt around his waist. With such a stern face, he seemed to have a bit of an air about him. It was hard to tell what he was thinking. Actually, Zhang Zhenxing was a little nervous. He knew who he was, and he also knew that there were many people in the imperial city who could crush him to death with a flick of their fingers. However, Qi Qingxian had told him that if he wanted the Flower King Pavilion to gain a foothold in the capital, other than having the flowers of the Flower King Pavilion to be presentable, he, as the nominal head of the Flower King Pavilion, had to be strong-willed. Qi Qingxian said, "Don't be afraid. If someone comes looking for trouble, just beat them back. If there's really someone who doesn't know their place, just report the name of Prince Ping's residence. If anything happens, Prince Ping's residence will take care of it." Therefore, he tried his best to hold it himself. Chen Mingzhu also realized that something was wrong. After all, she was the daughter of the Marquis's residence. She still had some experience. These people in gray, whether it was their aura or appearance, were not ordinary. Could it be that the Flower King Pavilion had some powerful background? The fourth watch. Today and tomorrow, she had to go for infusion during the day. Whether she wanted to continue after that would depend on the results. Well, tomorrow would be the fourth watch as well. The day after tomorrow would depend on the situation. Good night, everyone. Chapter 1974. It was all Chen Mingzhu's fault for thinking too highly of herself and not being popular. If she had been more cautious, she would have inquired about the background of the Flower King Pavilion. The emblem of King Ping's residence was still hanging there, but she did not even look at it. Secondly, as long as she had a good reputation in the capital, people would give her a little bit of attention, even if she was such a beautiful noble lady. Unfortunately, she did not. Therefore, when everyone else was watching, Chen Mingzhu threw herself at the muzzle of the spear. At this moment, she finally saw the large group of people surrounding her. There were some familiar faces among them. In terms of family background, they were not inferior to her, the eldest daughter of the Mingyi Marquis. However, those people were standing outside obediently. Chen Mingzhu was already regretting her actions. The florist in front of her did not seem to have any intention of falling out with her. Chen Mingzhu knew that if she backed out now, today's conflict would not even be considered a conflict. Unfortunately, what kind of temper did she have? Usually, she would not tolerate any grievances. How could she tolerate being taken advantage of in front of a small merchant? Chen Mingzhu thought clearly. So what if the Flower King Pavilion had a strong background? That was only because the master behind it was powerful. She looked at Zhang Zhensheng. If he was really of high status, he would not degrade himself to become a florist, right? No matter how powerful his master was, he would not make things difficult for her, the eldest daughter of a marquis, for the sake of a servant. After thinking about it for a while, Chen Mingzhu showed an overbearing smile on her face. Who do you think you are? How dare you talk about rules with me? Zhang Gensheng's expression changed. Gu Xingyin, who was standing not far away, also darkened her expression. She did not expect Chen Mingzhu to be so violent and brainless. The rest of the people, who were not on good terms with the Mingyi Marquis, were gloating when they heard what she said. In the capital city, there were many noble families who could not be offended. Among them, King Ping's residence was definitely one of the best. It was not only because of the noble status of King Ping's residence, but also because of the reputation of King Ping's residence. Other aristocratic families were very particular about their reputation. If you offended them, they would not show it on their faces. At most, they would return the favor secretly. However, King Ping's residence was not like that. If you dared to offend him, he would slap you in the face on the spot. It was that simple, crude, and unreasonable. What? You want to reason with him? King Ping was the most honorable and hereditary king of the Ming dynasty. The current King Ping's mother was the current emperor's younger sister. How could they reason with him? Before Zhang Zhensheng could say anything, the leader of the gray-robed men beside him spoke. Miss, you sure talk big. May I know which mansion you're from? Qi Qingxian was afraid that Zhang Zhensheng would not be able to handle the situation. Today, not only did he send out a large number of guards from the prince's mansion to support the situation, he also sent out his trusted subordinates. The gray-robed man was Wang Zhao, the captain of King Ping's imperial bodyguards. On the surface, he was Qi Qingshuan's #1 subordinate. Of course, he knew Zhang Gensheng's identity. The future father-in-law of the prince was actually being scolded by a little girl right in front of his face. Wang Zhao felt that if he did not settle this matter today, he would probably lose a layer of skin when he returned. He looked at Chen Mingzhu with cold eyes. In his heart, he loathed this brainless idiot of the Mingyi Marquis residence. Chapter 1975. Of course, he knew who Chen Mingzhu was. He was just mocking her by asking this question. Immediately, some people snickered. However, the people around Chen Mingzhu did not notice it. Hearing his words, the servant girl in green beside Chen Mingzhu replied proudly, "The person in front of you is the eldest miss of Mingyi Marquis Mansion." Chen Mingzhu showed an arrogant expression. She had always been proud of her family background. Wang Zhao said coldly, "So it's the eldest miss of Mingyi Marquis Mansion. I thought with such arrogance, you must be the princess of some mansion." He was an orphan adopted by the old King Ping. He was not burdened by any family, so he was not worried about offending anyone. Moreover, the Mingyi Marquis Mansion was already in decline. There was nothing to be afraid of. You. When Chen Mingzhu heard the first half of the sentence, she thought he was praising her. When she heard the second half, she knew he was mocking her. Presumptuous. Who do you think you are? How dare you speak to me like this? Who is your master? Chen Mingzhu was furious. Wang Zhao comforted the uneasy father Zhang and glanced at Chen Mingzhu unhurriedly. "Who is my master? You are just a daughter of the Marquis Mansion. You don't deserve to know." Gu Xingyin praised in her heart. This was a good slap in the face. This captain of the guards had a disdainful and mocking expression on his face. It was simply too satisfying. After Wang Zhao finished speaking, he did not wait for Chen Mingzhu's reaction. He immediately arranged for 2 people, "Please ask the eldest miss of Mingyi Marquis Mansion to leave. Today is the opening of the shop. Don't be too unlucky." Chen Mingzhu rebuked angrily, "Presumptuous, you." Before she could finish her sentence, the 2 women in gray had already approached them. It was unknown how they did it. They did not seem to touch Chen Mingzhu and her servant girl. The 2 of them suddenly fell silent and, obediently, followed them to the horse carriage of the Mingyi Marquis Mansion. Wang Zhao said coldly behind them, "Our master will personally pay a visit to the Mingyi Marquis Mansion another day." Seeing the domineering eldest miss of Mingyi Marquis Mansion being taken advantage of here, many people were curious about the identity of the owner of the Flower King Pavilion. Of course, there was an additional layer of reverence. Although the backer was the King Ping Mansion, everyone, at first, they were still observing how much this backer valued it. Now, they finally knew. He had mercilessly stepped on the face of a marquis estate. What was the relationship between the owner of the Flower King Pavilion and King Ping's mansion? At this time, the flowers that were moved out of the carriage were finally all brought into the shop. Zhang Gensheng went in to take a look and nodded at Wang Zhao. Those gray-robed men all scattered and retreated to the sides. Zhang Gensheng walked to the door with a smile on his face. He was not affected by what had just happened. "Thank you all for coming. Today is the grand opening of the Flower King Pavilion. We will be selling 5 pots of flowers. From tomorrow onwards, we will only be selling 1 pot a day. No pre-orders will be accepted. First come, first served. Welcome, guests." His words caused an uproar among the crowd. To be honest, he had never seen anyone do business like this. Did the Flower King Pavilion really think that they were selling a peerless immortal puppet? However, it had to be said that this move was quite effective. At the very least, regardless of whether they were interested before, they were now interested. Regardless of whether they bought it or not, they still wanted to go in and take a look. What exactly was inside such an arrogant shop? Chapter 1976. However, the crowd followed Zhang Zhenxing into the shop with an inexplicable desire to slap his face. Then, gasps could be heard all over the shop. This is a peony, a top-grade yellow yam. This is the red glow reflecting snow. This is Molan. Oh my god, there really is a 9-leaf snow lotus. Zhang Zhenxing looked at the luxuriously dressed customers with a smile, making a big fuss as if he had never seen the world. In the eyes of these people, his expression had become completely unfathomable at this time. However, 2 days ago, when his daughter called him to his courtyard for the first time and he saw the beautiful flowers in the courtyard, he did not look any better than these customers. This was simply inconceivable, all right? Regardless of which one of these flowers was taken out, they were all considered to be extremely rare and precious species. When displayed together like this, the impact it brought to people was undoubtedly huge. Not to mention, to be able to make so many different species of flowers bloom at the same time, other than the Flower King Pavilion, there was no other place that could do this. Those customers were all looking at these flowers with an expression of amazement. Each pot of flowers had a small label on it, indicating the selling price. The price was slightly different according to the species, but after looking at it for a while, there was not a single pot that was sold for less than 500 taels. 500 taels could be considered a sky-high price. However, when placed in this place, no one felt that the Flower King Pavilion was selling it for more. Very quickly, people came to ask Zhang Zhenxing all sorts of questions and expressed their intention to buy. There were many people who loved flowers. To those rich and powerful, a few hundred or 1,000 taels of silver was not a small sum, but it was not too much to buy something that they really liked. At this moment, Zhang Zhenxing smiled and said, "Previously, I said that this shop will only sell 1 pot of flowers a day. Today is the opening of this shop, so we are selling 5 pots. Distinguished customers, please take a look here." He pointed at the 5 pots of flowers that were placed in a circle on the counter in the middle of the shop. Today, we are only selling these 5 pots. From now on, the highest bidder wins. When Zhang Zhenxing returned to the residence, he felt as if he was floating. Gu Xingyin had already returned home. She looked at her excited father with a smile. "Jojo," Zhang Zhenxing looked at her with joy. Gu Xingyin smiled and handed him a cup of tea. Zhang Zhenxing took a sip and said excitedly, "Jojo, we sold the 5 pots of flowers today." He stretched out a few fingers. Gu Xingyin blinked her eyes and said with a smile, "Daddy, are you happy?" Zhang Zhenxing's face was glowing. How could he not be happy? Before today, he had never thought that he would be able to earn so much money one day. In one day, he had earned more money than he could earn in his entire life. It was like a dream. Gu Xingyin smiled and said, "Father, I want the entire Great Ming dynasty to think of the Flower King Pavilion whenever flowers are mentioned." Her calm voice was filled with unquestionable confidence. It will get better and better in the future. Zhang Zhenxing was stunned. He stared blankly at his daughter. Since when did his daughter, who only knew how to act coquettishly in his arms, grow to such an extent? Chapter 1977. Inexplicably, Zhang Zhenxing felt tears welling up in his eyes. For all parents in the world, having a promising daughter was the greatest consolation. He smiled and said, "Yes, it will get better and better in the future. Daddy's Jojo is really amazing." The newly opened Flower King Pavilion in the capital had become the topic of conversation in the streets and alleys overnight. The nobles were excitedly talking about the rare flowers in the Flower King Pavilion and estimated how much money they would need to buy the flowers they liked. As for the ordinary people, they were excitedly talking about how those big shots used money they would never dare to think of to buy a pot of beautiful flowers. Do you know the Hunting orchid? It's the best among orchids. Yesterday, a duke spent more than 3,000 taels of silver to buy this pot of flowers. TSK, more than 3,000 taels of silver. A fruit vendor bragged to the people beside him. Looking at his proud expression, those who didn't know would think that the flowers belonged to him. King Ping's residence. Old King Ping naturally knew what was happening outside. He was chatting with his son. Miss Zhang is really a capable person. I only thought that she was good at medicine. I didn't expect that her skills in growing flowers. Thinking about the sky-high prices of the plants in the Flower King Pavilion, King Ping started to worry. According to the horrifying selling speed of the Flower King Pavilion, this daughter-in-law's wealth was limitless in the future. Qi Qingxian was full of pride. Of course, how can the girl I like be a commoner? King Ping glanced at him. I'm going to the palace today to talk about the two of you. Qi Qingxuan's eyes lit up. Thank you, father. King Ping left immediately and arrived at the palace in the afternoon. You want to ask for a marriage for Qingxian? The emperor was surprised. His nephew was quite old. He had paid attention to this matter in private. However, King Ping's residence didn't seem to be in a hurry. The emperor also had his own thoughts, so he had put it aside. Now that King Ping took the initiative to mention it, the emperor was curious. King Ping looked angry. He sighed and said, "To be honest, Your Majesty, I'm not very satisfied with that girl." The emperor became even more curious. What do you mean? Old Ping Wang started to talk even more gloomily. From Gu Xingyin's appearance to her family background to her occupation, to sum it up, he was too good-looking, and one could tell that he was restless. The status of a merchant's family was slightly lower. Now that she had opened a flower shop to sell flowers, it would be embarrassing if word got out. However, when the emperor heard this, his heart suddenly relaxed. He trusted King Ping's residence, but that did not mean that he wanted his subjects to be too powerful. He had been delaying the betrothal of Ping Wang because he didn't want to find another powerful in-law for Ping Wang's residence. Now that his nephew had fallen in love with a merchant girl, it couldn't be more suitable. No. Although he was secretly pleased, the emperor could not show it on his face. Don't you see the old prince's depressed face? Therefore, the emperor first comforted old King Ping, then ridiculed his nephew together. Then, he began to comfort old King Ping that his children and grandchildren would have their own good fortune. As elders, they should not interfere too much. After chatting for more than 2 hours, old Ping King's tightly knitted brows finally relaxed. Chapter 1978. The emperor was relieved to see old King Ping like this, thinking that the matter was settled. However, he did not expect that the words that came out of old Ping King's mouth would make his dragon body tremble. Old King Ping looked at the emperor eagerly. He seemed a little embarrassed. Your Majesty, I think that the Shang girl is not suitable for my son. Why don't I ask for a favor from your Majesty? The emperor's eyebrows twitched. He agreed on the spot and asked, What do you want? Old King Ping said, I heard that the Minister of Revenue, Sun's youngest daughter. The emperor's eyelids twitched when he heard the Minister of Revenue, Sun's name. Sure enough, he had expected the latter part of the sentence. Old King Ping was implying that the Shang girl was of a lowly status and was not worthy of marrying into the King Ping mansion. He had always been satisfied with the Minister of Revenue's daughter. He might as well use this opportunity to ask the emperor to grant a marriage between his son and that Miss Sunday. As for his son's so-called true love, the title of concubine was the highest. The veins on the emperor's forehead twitched. Who was the Minister of Revenue? He was the head of a department and the mainstay of the imperial court. Old King Ping was good at scheming. How could the emperor allow the King Ping mansion to be related to the Ministry of Revenue? Moreover, the emperor wanted to give the miss of Sun's family to his son. He glanced at old King Ping, who was full of anticipation, and thought to himself, "My dear minister, this is really embarrassing." He said gently, "I don't think this is appropriate." When old King Ping left the palace, he did not look good. The young eunuch who led the way only felt that the old king's aura was as heavy as a mountain. It was so oppressive that he did not dare to say a word. Old King Ping's expression only relaxed when he got into the mansion's horse carriage and the curtain was lowered. There was a hint of a smile in his eyes. He had done everything he could for his son. The palace acted quickly. It did not take long for the emperor to find the information about the Zhang family and understand the relationship between the Zhang family and the King Ping mansion. Just like what the old King Ping had said, King Ping liked her very much. He even sent his own guards to support the Zhang family. Since that was the case, as her uncle, he naturally had to give face to his niece-in-law, right? Soon, the Flower King Pavilion received a decree from the palace. The general idea was that the palace had heard of the Flower King Pavilion's miraculous abilities and had specially ordered them to present 2 pots of flowers. This was a great honor. If the Flower King Pavilion could gain the recognition of the royal family, then its reputation would be stabilized. Not to mention, the royal family would never take advantage of others. The Flower King Pavilion had only sent 2 pots of flowers, but what they received in return was definitely not something that could be exchanged with 2 pots of flowers. Zhang Zhensheng was excited the entire afternoon. Finally, he picked out 2 pots of flowers with the best appearance and the most auspicious meaning. The next morning, he entered the palace early in the morning. The emperor was just casually looking for an excuse, but when he really saw the flower, he was really shocked. He asked Zhang Zhensheng a few questions. Of course, in the end, the topic turned to Gu Xingyin. When Zhang Zhensheng was led out of the palace by the young eunuch, he was still confused. He thought about the seemingly casual conversation between the emperor, but he couldn't understand what the other party was trying to ask. Chapter 1979. When he got home, he told his daughter about it. Gu Xingyin thought about it and recalled what Qi Qingxian said to her before. She reassured her father, "It's not a bad thing." Just as she expected, the imperial edict came from the palace the next day. Without any hesitation, under the witness of so many guests, guards dressed in palace attire carried a golden plaque to the entrance of the Flower King Pavilion. The emperor personally wrote the plaque and gave it to the Flower King Pavilion. All the guests present were shocked and wondered what the Flower King Pavilion had relied on to be valued so highly by the imperial palace. That was not all. What really shocked everyone was another imperial edict. It was an imperial edict from the master of the harem. The daughter of the Zhang family, the owner of the Flower King Pavilion, is intelligent and virtuous. She is conferred the title of County Princess Xifang. Not only were all the guests stunned, but even Gu Xingyin, who had been sitting in the inner chamber, was surprised. She did not expect that there was such an imperial edict waiting for her. County Princess Xifang. The title of County Princess was not low. The royal family was usually very stingy when it came to titles. Even for the daughters of the royal family, only those who were very favored could ask for an official title before they got married. But now, the royal family just conferred the title of County Princess to a commoner so easily. Although everyone else knew that this was just a title, no matter how fake it was, she was still a legitimate county princess with a title. This time, Gu Xingyin, the main character, had to show up. Thus, the others watched as a girl in pink walked out of the inner chamber of the Flower King Pavilion. She was beautiful. That was everyone's first thought when they saw Gu Xingyin. But if you were asked to describe how beautiful she was, no one would be able to say it out loud. Everyone felt that this person's figure, eyebrows, smile, and gaze were all perfect. When she walked out, the entire hall was filled with a sense of glamour. Gu Xingyin bowed elegantly and received the imperial edict. The eunuch who announced the decree said with a smile, "Congratulations, County Princess Si Fang." A smile appeared on Gu Xingyin's face. "Thank you, eunuch." Zhang Zhensheng also reacted and hurriedly invited these people from the palace to drink tea, but was politely rejected. "We still have to rush back to report, so we won't disturb you any longer." Seeing the group of people leaving, the entire Flower King Pavilion was in an uproar. Many of the madams who originally had a reserved smile on their faces looked at Gu Xingyin, who appeared in front of everyone for the first time, with smiles on their faces. Their tone was amiable and kind. "Congratulations, County Princess Si Fang." The owner of Si Fang County lives up to his name. Gu Xingyin listened to these compliments and did not feel embarrassed. She shuttled between the madams with ease and even accepted one or two invitations. In the eyes of those who were interested, her natural and unrestrained attitude naturally led them to speculate more about her origins. After this incident, the Flower King Pavilion's reputation had finally spread. Finally, it was recognized by the upper-class circle in the capital city. Countless people who cherished flowers were proud to have a pot of flowers personally cultivated by County Princess Si Fang. Over at Mingyi Marquis Mansion, after waiting for half a month, the news that the pot of luminous white peony from Kun Mountain would be sold finally came. Two updates before 12 o'clock. Chapter 1980. Chen Mingzhu was sitting in the room of the Marquis of Mingyi. "Mother, I got the news that the Flower King Pavilion is going to sell the Kunshan Luminous Glow tomorrow," Chen Mingzhu said. The Kunshan Luminous Glow was a treasure among the white peonies. It had been many years since a pure Kunshan Luminous Glow appeared in the Great Ming Dynasty. Everyone saw that the Flower King Pavilion was going to sell this one. The flower shape was perfect and the pinkish-white color looked like a pile of snow from afar. From its appearance, it was definitely of the highest quality. The Marquis of Mingyi said faintly, "The Kunshan Luminous Glow is rare. I think there will be many people competing with us tomorrow." She frowned when she said this. With her understanding of the Marquis of Mingyi and the old consort of King An's residence, she knew that the Flower King Pavilion had a Kunshan Luminous Glow and King An's residence would definitely think of a way to get it. In terms of strength, how many families in the capital could match up to King An's residence? However, would they waste such a good opportunity to establish a good relationship with King An's residence? She looked at her daughter and said, "Go to the Flower King Pavilion today and see that County Princess Si Fang to inquire about the news." She actually felt that the better way was for her daughter to establish a good relationship with Gu Xingyin. It would be best if that County Princess Si Fang could specially cultivate a peony for her daughter. However, at this time, the Marquis of Mingyi still did not know that her daughter had made a fool of herself at the Flower King Pavilion. These days, King Ping's residence was busy preparing for the wedding and had forgotten to find trouble with the Mingyi Marquis residence. Chen Mingzhu naturally did not dare to tell her mother about this matter. If the Marquis of Mingyi knew, she would probably be furious. Hearing her mother's words, Chen Mingzhu's face showed a trace of embarrassment. She had fallen out with the Flower King Pavilion in front of everyone. How could she put down her face and go there now? She would rather not enter that place for the rest of her life. However, meeting her mother's gaze, Chen Mingzhu did not dare to say anything. After saying yes, she obediently got into the carriage. When Gu Xingyin received the news that the eldest miss of the Marquis residence came to see her, she was surprised. With Chen Mingzhu's personality, she was willing to put down her face and come to the Flower King Pavilion. She thought about it for a while, then asked someone to bring Chen Mingzhu to the guest room on the other side. She wanted to see what Chen Mingzhu wanted to do. Chen Mingzhu casually sized up her surroundings. After looking around a few times, the corner of her mouth twitched slightly, revealing a hint of disdain. In her opinion, the Flower King Pavilion's hospitality was a little too simple. In her mind, simple was the same as shabby. She felt disdain in her heart. A commoner will always be a commoner. Even if she was lucky enough to be conferred the title of county princess, she still wouldn't be able to change her poor nature. Gu Xingyin had just walked in when she saw the disgusted smile on her face. She glanced around and roughly knew what Chen Mingzhu was thinking. This young miss had always liked gorgeous jewelry and decorations, so she probably didn't like this place. However, Gu Xingyin never thought of pleasing Chen Mingzhu. She asked, "Miss Chen, what can I do for you?" Chen Mingzhu subconsciously raised her head when she heard the sound. Then, she felt a flash in her eyes. She looked at Gu Xingyin, who was as beautiful as a blooming flower, and said with a sharp jealousy, "Your county princess Si Fang." Chapter 1981. These were actually very impolite words. Gu Xingyin frowned. Her personality had always been like this. If you respect me, I will respect you tenfold. However, if people were overbearing, she, Gu Xingyin, was never a pushover. Thus, under Chen Mingzhu's jealous gaze, Gu Xingyin gently rolled up her sleeves and calmly sized her up. "It is this county princess." She stood there quietly. Unlike Chen Mingzhu, who had a head full of pearls, she had a dignified aura. Sweeping a glance at Chen Mingzhu, Gu Xingyin suddenly said, "Does the upbringing of the Marquis of Mingyi's household not need to salute a revered one?" Chen Mingzhu's eyes widened. She did not expect that this unfamiliar county princess would speak so rudely on their first meeting. However, there was nothing wrong with what Gu Xingyin said. She was a county princess personally conferred by the imperial edict and had a noble second-rank title. Chen Mingzhu was a young lady of the Marquis's household without any noble title. When she saw Gu Xingyin, she ought to salute. Chen Mingzhu wanted to refute, but when she thought of her mother's words, she bit her lip and unwillingly saluted Gu Xingyin. She was just a lowly commoner who was lucky enough to fly to the top. Why was she putting on airs in front of her? Gu Xingyin did not move and quietly watched her complete the salute. She clearly saw the indignation in Chen Mingzhu's eyes. She smiled easily and turned to sit down on the main seat. "I wonder why young Lady Chen is looking for this county princess." She kept saying, "This county princess," as if she was afraid that others would not know her identity. In Chen Mingzhu's eyes, this was the typical attitude of a country bumpkin who had achieved success. However, she had to lower herself in front of this country bumpkin. Chen Mingzhu thought of her purpose for coming and secretly comforted herself that it would be fine. Once she obtained the peony flower and gained the favor of King An's dowager consort, she would smoothly become King An's heir consort. The rank of heir consort was much higher than that of a county princess. At that time, wouldn't a mere county princess without any real power be at her mercy? The more Chen Mingzhu thought about it, the more excited she became. The dissatisfaction in her heart also subsided a lot. She directly stated her purpose for coming. Gu Xingyin looked at the undisguised expression on her face and felt that he didn't know how to communicate with her. In this world, how could there be someone who felt that the world was revolving around them? She glanced at Chen Mingzhu and pondered for a moment. She thought that if she spoke in a roundabout way, this person would most likely not understand. If that was the case, she said, the Flower King Pavilion has its own rules. It sells 1 pot per day, and there's also a fixed number of flowers. According to the rules, the highest bidder wins. Did he mean that he wanted the luminous glow of Kun Mountain? Sure, I'll buy it myself. Chen Mingzhu said without thinking, there will definitely be a lot of people fighting over the Kunshan luminous lights that you are selling tomorrow. My Mingyi Marquis mansion might not be able to get it. So, I want to ask, do you have any other peony varieties in private? If you don't, can you just raise one for my Mingyi Marquis mansion? When Gu Xingyin heard this, she only wanted to say, "Haha, miss, you're really shameless. Not to mention that I don't have any right now, even if I do have other peonies, I don't want to sell them to you." She said, the flowers that are temporarily blooming have all been moved to the Flower King Pavilion. There are no extra flowers. Chen Mingzhu heard her and said, then my Mingi Marquis Mansion is willing to pay you money to help us raise a peony that is as good as the luminous glow of Kun Mountain. Gu Xingyin was speechless. Miss, where did you get the confidence to say that? I refuse. It was 4:00. It was the last day of the month. If you have a monthly ticket, please remember to vote for Gigi. Don't waste it. If you don't vote now, it will expire. Please, monthly ticket, monthly ticket. All. Chapter 1982. Chen Mingzhu's natural expression froze. She stared at Gu Xingyin with wide eyes, as if she thought she was seeing things. Gu Xingyin calmly looked at her. Chen Mingzhu looked at Gu Xingyin again before saying, I said, my Mingi Marquis Manor is willing to pay. Gu Xingyin calmly waited for her to finish speaking. Under Chen Mingzhu's gaze, she calmly nodded. This county princess heard it. This county princess answer is, refuse. Chen Mingzhu looked at Gu Xingyin like this and didn't know what to do for a moment. In the upper circles, everyone's words were always refined and refined. Even if it was a tactful refusal, they could still give you a flowery explanation. In that kind of situation, Chen Mingzhu was the best at playing dumb. But Gu Xingyin didn't give her this chance. This was the first time Chen Mingzhu had heard someone refuse her so directly without giving her any face. After she choked for a moment, she blankly opened her mouth to ask, why? After asking, Chen Mingzhu reacted and silently scolded herself for being stupid. If she spoke like this, she would be at a disadvantage. Gu Xingyin looked at her and her tone was a bit subtle. This county princess is not willing. Do I need a reason? She slowly said. Aren't you, Chen Mingzhu, unreasonable? This county princess is even more unreasonable than you. As expected, Chen Mingzhu was choked by Gu Xingyin's attitude that didn't plan on speaking nicely. Looking at Gu Xingyin's smiling face, she wanted to pounce on her and scratch her with her sharp nails. She was just a country bumpkin who reached the heavens in a single step. What was there to be proud of? She sinisterly said, County Princess has just arrived in the capital and doesn't know much about the matters in the capital. It's better not to casually make enemies with people. This was a threat. If Gu Xingyin really was a flower lady who had just arrived in the capital and relied on flowers to reach the heavens in a single step, hearing these words, she might really hesitate. But she was Gu Xingyin. She knew it very well. Even if there were powerful aristocratic families in the capital that could not be offended, the Chen family of the Mingi Marquis was definitely not one of them. They were just relying on their ancestor, Yu Meng. The Mingi Marquis residence, which didn't even have a promising disciple in the family, was really nothing to be afraid of. Thus, hearing Chen Mingzhu's words, Gu Xingyin only smiled reservedly and then lightly said, This county princess only knows that whoever doesn't give me face, I will trample her face into the ground. Her indifferent gaze suddenly turned cold and solemn, like a sharp sword shooting at Chen Mingzhu's face. Miss Chen, who gave you the guts to order this county princess around? Not to mention that this county princess doesn't have any extra peony seeds here. Even if I did, what face does your insignificant Mingi Marquis manor have to let this county princess personally raise one for you? Chen Mingzhu's face was ashen. You! Gu Xingyin interrupted her words, how about this county princess? Chen Mingzhu stared at her coldly. Gu Xingyin stared back at her mercilessly. In the end, Chen Mingzhu still didn't do anything. Surnamed Zhang, you better pray that you can always be so glorious. Chen Mingzhu gritted her teeth and finally left such a ruthless sentence. She flicked her sleeves and left. Gu Xingyin never cared about these ruthless words. In her opinion, a truly capable person never needed to use these words that had no other use other than bluffing to support themselves. Chen Mingzhu said ruthless words to herself only because she couldn't do anything else other than saying ruthless words. Chapter 1983. Chen Mingzhu indeed did not dare to act rashly. Before coming here, the Marquis of Mingyi had warned her, regardless of whether she could successfully ask County Princess Si Fong for help, she must not become enemies with her. To the people in the capital, County Princess Si Fong seemed to have appeared out of thin air. First, it was the Flower King Pavilion that had a relationship with King Ping's residence, which had always had a transcendent status. Then, there was that inexplicable edict from the palace. No one knew what kind of mysterious background this County Princess Si Fong, who had never appeared before, had. The Marquis of Mingyi was very clear about the current situation of the Mingyi Marquis residence. Right now, the Marquis residence only looked good on the surface. At this time, it was obviously not a wise choice to offend a county princess who was unknown and had a noble title. Therefore, Chen Mingzhu tolerated it. Of course, in her heart, she did not lower herself to County Princess Si Fong's level because of her mother's instructions. If Gu Xingyin knew what she was thinking, she would have laughed out loud. She really wanted to see what Chen Mingzhu was going to do. What was she going to do? When Chen Mingzhu returned to the residence, even though she was very unwilling, she had no choice but to report what had happened to her mother. Hearing that her daughter had become enemies with County Princess Si Fong, the Marquis of Mingyi almost fainted. She looked at Chen Mingzhu and the look in her eyes made Chen Mingzhu apprehensive. The Marquis of Mingyi looked at her daughter in disappointment and suddenly felt a wave of exhaustion. She remembered that she still had some expectations for the Marquis of Mingyi and did not care about her daughter when she was young. Instead, she only wanted to give birth to a legitimate son. But in the end, she did not have a legitimate son. Instead, she caused her daughter to be alienated from her and was led to become stupid by the people around her. Until today, Chen Mingzhu revered her mother more than she loved her. Thinking of this, the Marquis of Mingyi felt even more depressed. It was a pity that she could not say anything. However, at this moment, she did not want to see this daughter of hers who could mess up everything. You can leave first. She pressed her forehead with a slight headache and said in an indifferent tone. Chen Mingzhu heaved a sigh of relief. She did not want to face this strict mother at all. Seeing that her daughter did not even say a word of worry and left with a relaxed expression, the Marquis of Mingyi felt even more disappointed. Sometimes, she really felt that she had committed some sin to marry into such a household and give birth to such a daughter. At this moment, the Marquis of Mingyi was thinking whether she should find a way to repair the relationship with the Flower King Pavilion, and what kind of gift should she find for the old consort of King An. However, before she could make up her mind, another imperial edict from the palace shook the entire capital. His Majesty had personally issued an imperial edict to grant a marriage between King Ping and County Princess Si Fong. Who was King Ping? The great Ming dynasty's #1 king with a different surname, the son of the eldest princess. With the status of King Ping's residence, even if the imperial family married another princess, no one would find it strange. However, the person that the royal family had arranged for Prince Ping to marry was County Princess Si Fong, who had just appeared in the capital not long ago. Who was County Princess Si Fong? She was just a commoner girl that he had never heard of. Even if she had the title of County Princess, it could not erase the fact that she did not have any power behind her. Many aristocratic families were secretly guessing and waiting to see how King Ping's residence would react. Chapter 1984. It just so happened that the aristocratic families were still observing and had not decided what kind of attitude they should have toward County Princess Si Fong. The imperial edict had undoubtedly made a choice for them. Now, all they needed to do was wait and see what King Ping's mansion would do. If King Ping's mansion was satisfied, then everyone would be happy. County Princess Si Fong, who had the status of King Ping's wife and was given a marriage by His Majesty, would definitely be someone all the aristocratic families in the capital would want to curry favor with. If King Ping's mansion was not satisfied, whether King Ping's mansion disobeyed the imperial edict out of anger or reluctantly married this princess because of the imperial edict, the aristocratic family's attitudes would naturally change. An unfavored princess without any backing would not be able to bring any benefits to the aristocratic families even if she had the noble status of a princess. King Ping's mansion did not disappoint anyone. They quickly expressed their stance with their attitude. On the afternoon of the day the imperial edict was issued, the betrothal gifts from King Ping's mansion arrived at Gu Xingyin's county princess Si Fang's mansion. When the passers-by saw King Ping's mansion's attitude, they could not help but be speechless. Could it be that King Ping's mansion had emptied itself of all its wealth? The emperor, who was in the palace, naturally knew about King Ping's mansion's reaction. The emperor was very satisfied with King Ping's attitude. In his opinion, King Ping was not very satisfied with this daughter-in-law, but under his orders, he still insisted on King Ping marrying county princess Si Fang. A faint trace of guilt flashed across the emperor's heart. An emperor's guilt had always been willful. The emperor thought to himself, since King Ping has given me so much face, I can't be stingy. I'll make the future King Ping's mansion proud. Making the King Ping's mansion proud could also be used to shut the mouths of the people and indirectly make King Ping's mansion proud. Therefore, the crowd saw that before the betrothal gifts from King Ping's mansion were delivered, the gifts from the palace arrived at the county princess Si Fang's mansion from another route. Similarly, the gifts were gorgeous and expensive to a certain extent. Many aristocratic families looked at the gifts from the palace. At this scale, some of the less favored princesses would only receive this kind of gifts. What was the background of this King Ping's mansion, who had never been captured? The aristocratic families who originally looked down on county princess Si Fang were all bewildered at this moment. He originally thought that she was just from a small place and was lucky enough to be chosen by the palace and conferred the title of county princess. From the looks of it now, this Zhang family was not simple at all. However, no matter how hard those people investigated, they could only find out that the father and daughter of the Zhang family in the small town of Yun County were just ordinary businessmen. Of course, they didn't believe it. However, they couldn't find out anything more. Therefore, they were even more afraid of Gu Xingyin. Zhang Manor. Father Zhang was in a trance the whole day. Logically speaking, after being in the capital for so many days, he should have seen a lot of the world. However, when he saw the carts and boxes of things being sent over, his heart couldn't help but race. The past few months had completely overturned everything he had known in his life. With great difficulty, the sun finally set in the west, and the Zhang mansion finally quieted down. Father Zhang went to see his daughter. Daddy's Jojo, he looked at his daughter and sighed with emotion. His daughter would also be like this one day. She would be like a young lady from a wealthy family in a drama. She would be married in a glamorous manner and everyone would be envious of her. Chapter 1985. Just as the Flower King Pavilion's business was booming day by day and the Zhang mansion was preparing for the wedding, a special guest arrived at the county princess manor. When Gu Xingyin heard the person's name, he was surprised for a moment. After thinking about it, she ordered someone to bring the guest in. As Zhang Fei walked over, he looked at the richly ornamented buildings, small bridges, and flowing water. While he was envious, he was also a little nervous. During this period of time, he had not had a good encounter. After traveling for a long time, he heard that the Zhang family's father and daughter seemed to have come to the capital and had a great encounter. Thus, he hurriedly rushed over. The servant who led the way led him to a door and didn't go in. He bowed slightly and invited him in, then retreated. Zhang Fei had never experienced such rules and such an atmosphere. He took a deep breath and clenched his fists tightly in his sleeves. Then, he turned and stepped through the door. Zhang Fei's eyes widened the moment he saw the figure sitting on the main seat. His eyes were filled with a strong sense of surprise. "Sister Jojo, it's really you," he shouted in surprise. In the next moment, a delicate rebuke sounded from behind Gu Xingyin. "How dare you? How dare you call the county princess by her name?" Zhang Fei was shocked. Only then did he see clearly that there were two well-dressed maidservants standing behind Gu Xingyin. She had really struck it rich. She even had maidservants serving her. He thought to himself. He could not help but feel even more excited. Zhang Fei looked at Gu Xingyin with burning eyes. With a face full of smiles, he changed his words and said, "Your Highness, I am your elder brother. Why didn't you tell me that you had come to the capital?" There was even a hint of complaint in his words. Gu Xingyin did not ask him to sit. She calmly picked up a cup of tea and slowly sipped it. She did not seem to have any intention of responding to him. Zhang Fei was smiling at first, but as time passed and Gu Xingyin's attitude towards him, his expression slowly turned cold. When Gu Xingyin finished half a cup of tea, Zhang Fei finally couldn't help but say, "County princess, I know you're rich now. I heard you're going to marry the prince. I don't think your highness would want to marry a princess who even her elder brother is not willing to help, right?" Was this a threat? Gu Xingyin was a little amused as she handed the teacup to the servant girl beside her. Finally, her eyes landed on Zhang Fei. "Elder brother? Why can't this county princess understand young Master Shi's words?" She sneered. Hearing the words young Master Shi, Zhang Fei's expression changed. Gu Xingyin didn't wait for him to react and continued, "I heard that young Master Shi is the eldest son of the Shi family in Lanzhou. The moment he was discovered by the family, he was worshipped in the ancestral hall and recorded in the family records." She suddenly stood up. "When young Master Shi officially changed his name to Shi Yunfei, why didn't you think that you were the adopted son of Yun County's Zhang family? Why didn't you think of reporting back to the Zhang family? Why didn't you tell the Shi family that you were adopted by the Zhang family?" She sneered and said, "This county princess's father only has one daughter, me. I, Zhang Jojo, also don't have any elder brother. Young Master Shi, go back to where you came from." When Zhang Fei, no, Shi Yunfei heard her merciless words, he began to panic. He had thought of many things, but he never thought that the Zhang family would have this kind of attitude when he came all the way to the capital. Chapter 1986. How could he possibly go back? Shi Yunfei recalled his experiences in the past few months. It was as if he had fallen from the sky to the ground. When he first found the Shi family in Yun province, they were not enthusiastic about him and did not even have any intention of acknowledging him. This was because his birth mother had passed away long ago. Now, his birth father had married his stepmother, and his stepmother had given birth to two extremely promising sons. To the Shi family, the eldest son who had been missing for more than a decade was not as precious as they had imagined. However, the change in attitude came when they found out about the identity of the people around him. After hearing that Shi Yunfei's subordinates were from King Ping's residence and that Shi Yunfei was able to find the Shi clan with the help of King Ping's residence, the Shi clan's attitude toward their eldest son changed drastically. A son who could establish a relationship with King Ping could definitely bring the Shi family to greater heights. Shi Yunfei's father, who was also the head of the Shi family, ignored his wife's unhappiness and quickly contacted the elders in the family to open the ancestral hall for his son who had been wandering outside for many years to acknowledge his ancestors. He also changed his name from Yun to Shi Yunfei. Shi Yunfei knew that the family's enthusiasm must have something to do with King Ping's residence. Of course, he would not be so foolish as to say that he had nothing to do with King Ping's residence. Every time the Shi family asked about it, he would give a vague answer. As time passed, the Shi family naturally became suspicious. Finally, after more than a month, the head of the Shi family discovered that the few guards from King Ping's residence had disappeared. After repeatedly interrogating Shi Yunfei and only receiving vague answers, the head of the Shi family felt that he might have been deceived. He sent people to Yun County to investigate, and the results he received made him vomit blood. This son of his had nothing to do with King Ping's residence. After so many years, he was only adopted by a small shop owner. This time, it was a complete coincidence that King Ping's residence had established a relationship with him. When the head of the Shi family questioned Shi Yunfei saw that he could no longer hide it and could only tell the truth. The head of the Shi family was so angry that he left in a huff. From that day onwards, Shi Yunfei's life in the Shi family became very difficult. At first, his food and clothing became worse, and the servants in the family also began to neglect him. His two half-brothers, who were younger than him by the same father but different mothers, had already received scholarly honors. As time passed, Madame Shi, who was well aware of her husband's thoughts, finally stopped concealing her malice after confirming that there was no possibility of her son being reinstated. Shi Yunfei didn't expect that a rich family would have so many tricks up their sleeves. After a few months, Shi Yunfei, who couldn't bear it anymore, finally ran out of that clan one day. He returned to Yun County, only to find that the Zhang family was no longer there. After asking around, he finally found the capital. After learning about the Zhang family's current situation, Shi Yunfei was very excited. He also thought of many things. He even thought that he would become the elder brother of the county princess and the princess consort. He even thought that if he went back to the Shi family of Yun province with this identity, the clansmen of those forces would probably be very enthusiastic about him. Thinking of this possibility, Shi Yunfei felt a wave of satisfaction in his heart. Unfortunately, the only thing he didn't expect was that Gu Xingyin wouldn't give him a chance to return to the Zhang family. Chapter 1987. No, it could not be said that Gu Xingyin did not give him a chance to return to the Zhang family. It should be said that he had given up the opportunity to be a member of the Zhang family when he had not expected the Zhang family, who had raised him for more than 10 years, to return to the Shi family without hesitation and change his name. Gu Xingyin knew that he wasn't a masochist. So, why should she give such an ingrate a chance to continue to harm the Zhang family? She looked at Shi Yunfei coldly and was about to ask someone to send him away. Shi Yunfei looked at Gu Xingyin in a daze. He was completely unfamiliar with her. He was panicking. He could not go out. Shi Yunfei was very clear in his heart that he was already at the end of his rope. He could not rely on the Shi family at all, and he did not have an official position. If the Zhang family did not want him, he would really have nowhere to go. Before Gu Xingyin could speak, he quickly said, "Sister Jojo, Sister Jojo." He said anxiously, "I know that I did not do well in returning to the Shi family. But Sister Jojo, you have to understand me. I was just excited when I finally found out about my biological parents after so many years. Sister Jojo, you have always been by father's side. You definitely won't understand this feeling." When Gu Xingyin heard this, she was so angry that she laughed. "So, you mean that the Zhang family has raised you for so many years, but in your heart, you have always been thinking about your biological parents? The Zhang family has raised you for more than 10 years, and it is nothing in your eyes? The Zhang family is not a scourge, and you are not even willing to send back a message. You have made my father worry for so long for nothing. Shi Yunfei, if you like the Shi family so much, then why are you looking for us now?" A trace of embarrassment flashed across Shi Yunfei's face. He had come to look for the Zhang family because he realized that the Shi family was not as good as he had imagined. He could not live the life of a young master surrounded by followers. He reluctantly said, "Of course it's because I discovered that I still prefer the Zhang clan." Gu Xingyin said coldly, "Put away your excuses, Shi Yunfei. You came to the Zhang family only because you found that the Shi family didn't treat you as a young master like you thought. They didn't take you seriously at all. Now that the Zhang family is standing at a height that even the Shi family has to look up to, you think you can climb up to a higher branch, don't you? Shi Yunfei's expression was ugly. Although that was indeed what he was thinking in his heart, it still made him feel a little embarrassed when it was said out loud in front of others. He said in a hoarse voice, "Sister Jojo, why are your words so unpleasant?" Gu Xingyin interrupted him, "I can say worse things, so Shi Yunfei, don't force me. See the guest out." Two people dressed as guards walked in and took him out. Shi Yunfei looked at Gu Xingyin fiercely and shouted, "Zhang Jojo, don't think that you can turn your back on us just because you are rich. So what if you are famous now? You don't even have a brother in your family. How long can you be like this? Let me tell you, there will be a time when you beg me." His words were covered by someone. Shi Yunfei only felt that he had been ruthlessly kicked, and it was very painful. He was directly thrown out of the gate of the county princess's manor. One of them even warned him by his ear, "If you dare to say anything dirty, don't even think about keeping your tongue." Chapter 1988. Shi Yunfei's heart skipped a beat. The gloominess and murderous intent in the conversation made him believe that it was not just a threat. However, he felt his body lighten, followed by pain. He was thrown onto the street outside. The passers-by looked at him curiously. Shi Yunfei wanted to scold him, but he remembered the warning he was given. His face turned red and white. He covered his face with his sleeves and planned to leave. Finally, he reached a remote alley. Shi Yunfei rolled down his sleeves angrily. He remembered the humiliation he suffered just now. His face was filled with resentment. "Zhang Jojo, you're ruthless." He thought about it, but he did not know what to do next. Seeing that it was getting late, he sighed and prepared to find a cheaper inn. However, when he turned around, he saw a few people standing in front of him. Gu Xingyin was eating fruit when she received a message from the system. Those two people are together. She was surprised that Chen Mingzhu and Shi Yunfei could be related. However, it was nothing. She nodded and said, "It's good that they're together. It saves me a lot of trouble." A few days passed. King An's consort dowager's birthday. As the future Princess Ping, Gu Xingyin naturally received an invitation. She knew why Chen Mingzhu asked her for the peony flower. King An's consort dowager loved peonies. Not many people knew about it, but it was not few either. If the Marquis of Mingyi could find out about it, other people would naturally know about it too. The pot of Kunshan luminous peony sold by the Flower King Pavilion a few days ago was bought by King An's imperial residence. If Gu Xingyin wanted, she could give a pot of peony of good quality. It would definitely be the most satisfactory gift for King An's imperial residence. However, she thought about it in the end and chose a famous painting of the Star of Longevity. This gift was not too outstanding, but it was not rude. With Gu Xingyin's current status, there was no need for her to curry favor with King An's imperial residence. On the day of King An's imperial residence's birthday, Gu Xingyin saw many well-dressed girls when she arrived at King An's imperial residence. Her gaze shifted to the crown prince of King An who was greeting the guests with his father. She thought of the rumors from before and had an idea in her mind. So that was the case. No wonder Chen Mingzhu was so anxious to gain the favor of the old consort of King An. However, Gu Xingyin sneered in her heart, "This Mingyi Marquis Mansion's plane is really wishful thinking. What kind of status did An Wang's imperial residence have?" An Wang Fei was a forceful person, and her standards for a daughter-in-law were equally strict. Mingyi Marquis residence was a fallen noble family. If they wanted to enter the imperial residence of Prince An, they would be dreaming. Gu Xingyin's arrival aroused the curiosity of many people. As County Princess Sifang, the future princess consort Ping, her reputation in the capital was not small. Everyone was very curious about her. Although they didn't say anything, they were secretly sizing her up from the corners of their eyes. Gu Xingyin's outfit today was not too eye-catching. After all, she was someone who was engaged. There was no need for her to be in the limelight at this kind of occasion. However, there was a kind of beauty called natural beauty that was hard to give up. Even if she did not do anything and her outfit was not eye-catching, as long as she stood there, it was as if she had her own attraction, attracting the attention of the people around her. The noble ladies who were originally standing beside Gu Xingyin naturally noticed this problem. They were secretly annoyed and distanced themselves from her. No girl would be happy to have her limelight stolen. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.